From today on, Rachel had to give up all attempts to participate in the family business. She was the second child of Count Rosaltine, and he planned to give her a chance, but the thought was short-lived. The Count asked his first son, Raymond, about this plan, and the boy said that her sincerity was admirable, but nothing more. The fact is that achieving success in the empire's business is difficult, but in terms of export, it was difficult to avoid losses in this matter. Rachel glanced at the plans and noticed a waffle iron design and thought she should try to get her hands on that plan. The elder brother informed his sister that she had better leave further business matters and concentrate on her engagement. The father said that, besides, regardless of everything, he had already sent a message to the imperial palace. The girl asked why. The duke replied that because he insisted on her engagement to the crown prince, Rachel asked in horror, to become engaged to him. Yes, he answered. Because she wanted it so much, he had already given the letter to Chen, so now the crew was most likely already leaving. Then Rachel screamed excitedly that she had to look at him first and ran out of the office. She ran up to Chen, and the man asked the lady if something had happened and if she wanted to ask him to buy something for her. But then the girl snatched the letter about her engagement from his hands and tore it into pieces, and she said that they knew she was fickle. Rachel would protect them, because it was one of the roots who destroyed the family. The heroine's outlet is to read alone. Leave the secondary characters alone. And this book completely absorbed her 2 days ago, a girl who lives only for her parents and younger brother. And although she managed to join a large international sales department, as far as she remembered, it all ended in death from overwork. She wanted to watch her younger brother graduate and die. But whatever the case, she didn't regret anything in that life. If it weren't for her obsession with baking, any baked goods would have been delicious. So after saving up money, she wanted to open her own bakery. Therefore, as soon as she got used to this idea, she began to look forward to its implementation. In this world, any device could be created with magic. And the family she ended up with had actually made a huge fortune from the production of similar devices and instruments. However, according to the original, this family was destroyed by the villain Rachel, and no matter what she did, it always failed. All this torments the heroine, who is bound to suffer. But since she remembers the original story very well, she could avoid the fall. And now, no one will stop her and her bakery, which is how she got the idea to start baking. And so she simply took and tore up the letter regarding her engagement. The father learned from his daughter. Rachel presented her first business plan to her father, and the Count agreed with her, but he had the condition that if she failed, she would marry the heir of the Daneve merchants. And the Danev's heir was Daniel. And in the end, the girl was sure that nothing good would come of it. Although, as far as she knew, Daniel was politically neutral, there were dirty rumors about him, and he had a pretty good family. He was one of the candidates for the role of the main male character, and the father probably cared about his daughter quite a lot. Even though she was clearly not outstanding, he still wanted to give her to the crown prince, but she still didn't want to be forced into a marriage. She agreed to her father's conditions, and the Count said that it would be good if everything worked out. He would regain his face, and the girl reminded him of the conditions with failure. When asked where she wanted to open a bakery, Rachel proudly answered, on 7th Street, next to the residence of the Duke of Hessen. The Count said with disappointment that this was an absolutely unprofitable place, and Ray could clearly see that there was no longer a drop of hope left in him. But in any case, the Count still bought her a building there, and even though the owner was the Count himself, she didn't have to pay taxes in this place. She didn't have any money to put into circulation yet, but she did own an unused mine. Martha's personal maid asked if she really intended to go out alone, without any escort, and in a maid's costume. But Rachel assured Martha that nothing would happen to her, and asked if she would keep it a secret. Of course, the girl exclaimed cheerfully, and asked the lady to trust her. Until she returned, she would do everything so that she would not be missed. The Countess was counting on her, but, as usually happens, her attitude towards her could quickly change. Rachel relied on her more than anyone else, but it turned out that Martha was the ward of her older brother, Raymond. She informed the driver on behalf of Mrs. Rachel that she had a very important errand for her. The man sadly assumed that she was new, and said that she would have many difficulties. Not everyone could cope with the role of a maid. She felt strange hearing these words about the Rachel who came before her, but thanks to this, they were ready to let her down without even knowing who she was. The driver asked where she was going, and Rachel, dressed as a maid and hiding her face with her hair, asked to be taken to Citron Square. In fact, she needed to go somewhere else, but the girl wanted this to reach Raymond's ears. And all because, from now on, she will persistently collect capital for her bakery. It's been half a year since the guy was in the capital, even though they visit the border with a defense detachment every year. But every time he comes back, it seems like too much time has passed, and he suggests returning to the palace. But suddenly, Duke Cloud Geeson jumped up from his seat and galloped calmly to the tree with an announcement about the opening of the bakery. He asked who would have thought of putting up a notice on a street tree, and the assistant said she would check to see if the notice had been approved. But the Duke said that he had had enough, and the boy shuddered and thought that he must have become very angry. And he wanted to take this announcement down from the tree, but in an instant he discovered that it was gone when the Duke himself put the announcement in his jacket. So the name of the man she was going to meet was the head of this bank, Robert Daneve. Rachel said she needed to discuss something with him about investing. The girl said that if she wanted to meet with the director, she would first need to make an appointment with him and ask to come back next time. Well, of course, she wasn't going to let Rachel in. That wouldn't work. She didn't want to attract attention. But now she was lying on the floor. And at that very moment, she began to be hysterical like a little child, saying that she had to meet him or his brother. The girl asked worriedly why she had bumped into this particular girl, while she continued to scream. She called the guards, and the guys lifted Rachel from the floor, grabbing her by the arms and indignantly asking what such a woman was doing here. But then the head of the Central Bank of Citron, Robert Daneve, approached the noise and asked what was going on here. Having freed herself, Rachel greeted the director and said that she had come here because she knew of a good investment project. The guy shuddered at the words about the development of the imperial market, Aber, and Ray asked if he had a minute to talk in person. The guy looked at the girl with some distrust, frowning, narrowing his eyes and pursing his lips. Having agreed to the meeting, they went into the office, but the guy said that they didn't need tea. When the door closed behind him, Robert walked past Rachel, went to the table, and lit a cigarette. But then Rachel said that he didn't need to create a special atmosphere. She knew that he hated the smell of tobacco. The cigarette fell from his hands in surprise, and Robert asked him not to talk nonsense. Ray said that in fact he even held his breath. Daniel is the heir of the Daneves, like Robert from the Central Bank of Citron. They are twin brothers who keep their distance and do not cross paths with each other. However, the fact is that after Robert's death, his younger brother Daniel began to pretend to be Robert, playing both brothers at once. If you think about it, people like him clearly don't have 24 hours in a day. It's a pity for him, because she also died from overwork. Daniel knew she had never met Robert, but she was clearly the kind of person who knew information that could be gleaned from personal contact. And then, taking off her hat and glasses, the girl decided to reveal her identity and called herself Rachel Roseltine from the Count's family. The guy looked at her with fascination and said that he was not interested in aristocrats, so he had never seen Lady Roseltane. And having heard that she was a real beauty, Ray washed her face and again confirmed that she was indeed Rachel Roseltine. Judging by the guy's surprised face, she wondered if he really had completely different tastes. Well, she didn't expect such an outcome at all, and there was nothing to be done. The girl lay down on the floor again, and Daniel, realizing what this would lead to, shouted and asked her to stop, and that he would bring them tea. Sitting down at the table, Daniel asked for a promise, before they moved on to the conversation, that his personal information would remain a secret. Rachel agreed with him, and while sipping tea, said that diamonds would be very fashionable in aristocratic circles next spring. And so, if he invests in a diamond mine now, he will make a colossal profit by spring. If so, her words must have been truly reliable information. But Ray had no reputation. Sandstorms have been raging all over the world, causing famine everywhere except the capital. Besides, her mine had long since dried up, and she couldn't even provide him with a source of reliable information. So why on earth should he trust and deal with her? And Rachel asked, it seems he was going to make deliveries of wheat. After all, the main food of the inhabitants of the empire is wheat. and Rachel said with a smile that she wanted to help him with this. At this point, the entire world was suffering from crop failure, which was caused by large-scale sandstorms, but did not affect the center of the empire. Merchants, taking advantage of the opportunity, began to export wheat outside the empire and sell it at high prices. But this was not enough, so the crown prince proposed a law banning the temporary export of wheat from the empire. He received enormous support from the people and personally supervised such projects. He will quickly begin to monitor them, and even their family will not escape this. Before they were caught, she advised burning all the wheat. "But that would be very unfair," Daniel shouted. Having surrendered his fist, he asked about another way and believed that she had come here precisely to offer him a solution in exchange for the implementation of her plan. If she tells him the solution to this problem, provided that the wheat does not have to be burned, then in return he will give her what she wants. Rachel smiled sweetly and replied that it was good that their conversation was gaining momentum. She wanted him to open a bank account in the name of the bank director. Daniel worriedly said that this was not possible, but Rachel gave him some pretty strong arguments. In that case, he could lend her his personal account because he didn't want to do anything that could tarnish his brother's name. After talking, Ray realized that he was quite self-confident and agreed, talking about the warehouse that he would leave open and where he could store all the wheat. Daniel then asked if it was dangerous to be located near the residence of the prince's right-hand man. But Ray believed that hiding in plain sight was the safest place. After all, this is Rachel Rosaltine's own warehouse, and she is literally a symbol of business failure. Aimlessly collecting all sorts of things is a common thing for her. Her confidence surprised her, and Ray said that in order to avoid charging him rent, she would like to buy wheat from him at half price. Daniel said she knew she would have to be disposed of somehow, so he could sell her the whole thing. She should have said that she was going to donate some of it, because Daniel himself makes secret donations to the poor. During periods of crop failure, it is not the aristocrats who suffer the most, but the poor, as well as the institutions where children live. So she said there was a kindergarten on 12th Street, and she wanted to donate all the unsold baked goods there. Rachel said she loves delicious bread and cookies, so she plans to make a lot of donations. This tactic worked on Daniel, and when he asked if she was serious, Ray confirmed it was all because of the reduced price ingredients. At that very moment, they decided to sign the contract immediately, and Daniel immediately provided the papers. But then he stopped and asked what the name of the mine for which they were signing a contract was. Ray answered, "Hector." Daniel noted with disbelief that mining there had now stopped and asked if copper hadn't been mined there before. Ray replied that very soon someone under a false name would announce the presence of diamonds there and asked if he trusted her. Hearing this, Daniel exclaimed that he was ready to pay her any price. Just let her tell him where she got such information from, and he signed the document. Furthermore, from that moment on, Rachel asked him to export the mined diamonds only to the Aber Empire. At some point, diamonds will become scarce, and their price will rise. But aristocrats are prepared even for this, and she asked that they be sold only at a very, very high price in order to make even more donations. So, thanks to her persistent attack, this agreement was finally signed, and she provided her bakery with flour. While polishing the room until it shone, Rachel complained about her aching lower back and thought about finishing. But still, she still had to bake the bread before sunset and prepare the necessary ingredients. Of course, they tasted different from those in her past life, so she would have to recreate the perfect recipe. You had to pour flour into a bowl, add yeast, sugar, and a pinch of salt. She will change the proportions in each bowl of dough and write down the characteristics of each, and pour in the milk beaten with eggs. Once the mixture is mixed, you need to start kneading the full dough. Rachel was very happy and would like to continue making bread in her bakery for the rest of her life. The first time her bread turned out badly, but her little brother still liked it and thought about it without her. But she suddenly remembered that her current one has a younger sister. The Countess had several miscarriages after the birth of her brother. And then the woman who could not get over her grief decided to adopt a child, and she was Rachel Rosaltine. But almost immediately after that, she finally had a successful delivery and a healthy baby was born. And it was the birth of this child that made Rachel a villain. She wanted to give her father the best bread, but now she was thinking about the youngest one too. It was easier to survive when you had friendly and warm relations with your family, But then the second test rose, and it was time to take the meringue out of the oven. Now she put a few balls of dough into the pan, and then she put them in the oven to bake, and now she had to repeat this over and over again until she found the perfect version of the recipe. The next morning, a letter arrived, saying that they needed to postpone their diamond mining plan to avoid the prince's surveillance. In this letter, he beat around the bush, and it was probably time for her to write him a letter asking him to launder the money. But then Martha announced that Mr. Raymond wanted her to come to his office after lunch. Rachel sighed and said that if he had something to say, then he should come to her and tell her personally about it, and then her brother came in. Raymond said with displeasure that he knew he had to come, so he left immediately just in case. And Rachel, giving her older brother a displeased look, wondered what business he had with her. She asked what he needed, saying that she was busy now, and Raymond asked if she had left the house. The sister argued about who told him this, and whether it meant that he came to praise her for her good behavior. Gritting his teeth and grabbing his sister by the collar, the guy shouted menacingly that it wasn't funny what she did to Isabel. Does she think that if she leaves home, everything will remain in the past? Her father still fusses over her solely at the behest of their mother. Last will, that's what it is. Thanks for telling us about something that wasn't in the original story. But at least she asked her father himself if this was true. What a scumbag he was, Rachel thought. But he kept shouting, even if she was grateful, it was still not enough. How could she live in peace? And even after she pushed her little sister into the pond, she's still a scumbag, Ray thought. And having broken free, she said that she had no intention of becoming independent. But the bakery did, she thought. And she asked if he could leave if he had said everything, and Raymond realized that she was going to live like this until the very end. Then Ray asked Martha to try to guess what was on Raymond's mind, and would get a bonus if she could. The maid then suggested that he might not have even thought beyond that, and was generally behaving like a child. After handing Martha a couple of gold coins, Rachel asked if what Raymond had said was true, and after hesitating, Martha tensely replied that she never believed in rumors, although in the mansion they were spread as a fact. This made things more difficult because she had no old memories of Rachel herself. In the original, it was Isabel who made Rachel a villain and overreact to everything. She was sure that since she was still young, it wouldn't happen right now. But could it really be Isabel? Rachel came to visit her sister, and the doctor who was sitting with her said that Isabel still hadn't regained consciousness. After some thought, Rachel asked if he could step out for a moment, saying he wanted to be alone with her. The man replied gloomily that Madame Isabel was not yet in a condition to eat, and he asked her to show respect and not eat right there. But Rachel replied that she had no intention of eating it. She just wanted to give this bread to Isabel if she was conscious, and then the doctor came out suspiciously. Finally, the girl was left alone with her little sister and thought that she was like strawberry jam. Having met her, she felt something strange. Why was their relationship so bad? Did Ray even love this little girl? The girl asked Isabel to wake up, because when she wakes up, her older sister will give her a lot of goodies. How about a slice of cake with fresh strawberries, or soft bread with blueberry pieces and homemade cream cheese? It would also be good to eat wet tiramisu with a fork. She would probably have her mouth all over in cocoa afterwards. When she wakes up, she will definitely feed her plenty of baked goods, so she asked her to get better soon. The new batch of meringues had to cool down. Only the cooled meringues were worth storing. After all, at the opening itself, you should only display what is sure to sell well. Before that, she will need to prepare a lot of different baked goods, because she does not intend to miss a single customer. This was the only way she could quickly buy this building from her father. But suddenly, she heard a child's voice calling her. Rachel turned around to see Isabel standing in front of her and asked what she was doing there. The little girl told her sister that she thought she was going to die and, grabbing her hand, thanked her. Ray asked what she was thanking her for, and the girl happily replied that she had saved her from falling into the pond. Ray asked why she thought that, and suggested that she was probably confused from falling into the water. But the girl joyfully exclaimed that yesterday in her dream, she heard her voice and was convinced of everything. However, her words were completely different from the rumors that everyone was talking about, and she was wondering how she should react to this. But first, she had to feed her, and with a jar of meringues, she said she had made them especially for her. Isabel happily thanked her sister and said that she would eat it with pleasure, and Ray asked to take another one for her. But then her older brother burst into the bakery and angrily asked Rachel what she was doing. Looking back at the screaming boy in the doorway, the girl wondered why he had come here again. He shouted with an irritated look, "How dare she just bring Isabel here and feed her something?" Rachel replied that she didn't even know that Isabel would come here, and that she was feeding her meringue, which she had prepared herself. The girl leaned over and asked Isabel how it tasted, and the girl replied admiringly that it was very tasty. Looking at her brother, Isabel enthusiastically said that the cookies Rachel gave her were the best in the world, and shouting that therefore he should not hate her so much, she asked if he understood her. Since she had acquired this body, she had not remembered anyone supporting her here, and it was Isabel who did it. The girl asked her brother Raymond what he was doing when she fell into the pond. She was very scared. Rachel took down that monster octopus with her whisk and also swatted a lizard the size of a mansion with an oven sheet. And when she woke up, she fed her some delicious bread, and Rachel realized that while she was sick, she had a dream. Either way, Isabel was here, and she didn't care what he was doing there. But does he really not believe the words of his beloved little sister at all? Ray asked with a smile. And Isabel got here by saying that she would give money to whoever told her where to find her sister, and her servants brought her here. There was one day left before the bakery opened, and it seemed like she would definitely have to weed today. At the last minute, she wanted to do a few more things. The bread dough was just rising in the oven. The wheat that Daniel prepared for export was processed into various types of flour. And this time, she will prepare pumpkin muffins. If everything is done well, it will become a dish that many people will like. The ingredients were sweet pumpkin, fine flour, butter, eggs, sugar, almond flour, and baking powder. First, you had to bake the pumpkin, cut part of it into half moons, and remove the pulp from the rest. Then add the remaining ingredients and mix everything thoroughly to make pumpkin dough. Press the batter into round muffin tins lined with parchment paper. Place the sliced pumpkin on top and place it in the oven while the dough for soft bread rises. Here they also added the remains of the pumpkin, and, after she weeded a little, the muffins were ready. After trying them, they turned out to be very juicy, which is why she added baked pumpkin instead of pumpkin flour. She thought about adding whipped cream, but suddenly realized that she had gotten carried away with perfecting the recipe and had made too much. What can she do? Now she has to bake bread, but if you look at it this way, she should have made donations. So, while tying my apron, I decided to bake some more, hoping that the kids would like it. The lady happily met Rachel and introduced herself as Katerina, the director of the Stabilo shelter. She was pleased to see her happy smile, and Ray hoped that in the future she would be just as happy to see her. The director thanked everyone for donating excess baked goods, and the girl told them that she was preparing for the opening. Rachel asked if she could fulfill one request. Could she taste the baked goods she had given her? She was very interested in her honest opinion, and Katerina happily agreed to it. The children pounced on the gifted treats with delight and said in admiration that they would eat only this. The boys also wanted to try making this bread, but Ray said that the oven was very hot and dangerous. But as soon as they grow up, she will definitely give them some cooking tips, and until then, she will bake herself. But suddenly, Rachel noticed that the headmistress's eyes seemed to sparkle for a moment, or perhaps she imagined it. Ray asked if she liked the bread, but Katerina shuddered and replied that it had a very bright aroma and a pleasant texture. She thought it would also make a good gift, and said it was the best bread she had ever tasted. The lady said that she would definitely succeed, and Ray noticed that the children liked it too, so she would definitely bring more. But it was already time for her to go back, and Katerina waved and wished her a good trip. This means that on the first day of opening, such bread simply could not fail to sell, because everyone who tried it praised it highly. Be that as it may, Rachel thought it would be worth showing her dear headmistress what money tasted like. From the moment she opened in the morning, Rachel was bombarded with questions from customers asking if they had any good morning bread. Customers have been asking about ordering large quantities in advance and about the cooking time for the muffins. Rachel responded to all of them, saying that the brisk morning bread was on the second shelf and offering to help with the calculation. The pre-order system was still in preparation, with soft bread arriving in the morning and muffins arriving by lunchtime. Everything went even too well. Soon the shelves were empty, and Ray, collecting money, thought about decorating the second floor in the future. But suddenly, her stomach began to rumble, and she realized that she should eat first. Today, she especially wanted a mint chocolate chip cookie. But then Rachel realized that today, she had just been thinking of taking something to Isabel. But what if she doesn't like mint chocolate? What if Raymond sees her start to feel sick? Covering the baby with his hand, he screamed that she was feeding her all sorts of rubbish, calling her a villain. Then she'll just make some chocolate chip cookies and add some nuts for a brighter flavor. To make it, you needed mint chocolate, nuts, chocolate chips, fine flour, sugar, eggs, butter, and salt. Please note that mint chocolate is not available in this world, so she made it herself. After the white chocolate has melted, add butter and food coloring and mix thoroughly. Then you need to squeeze it out little by little and let it cool. After all the ingredients are mixed, divide the dough into 2 parts. Don't overwork them to avoid getting tough cookies. Shape them into a round shape and place them on parchment paper. They then sprinkle peppermint drops on top of 1/2 of the cookies and nuts on the other half. We put the cookies in the oven and waited. They smelled very delicious, and Rachel hoped that Isabel would like them. After a while, her sister came running to meet her and asked if she had come to visit her. Of course, Rachel answered. She promised that she would make and bring delicious bread and desserts. She asked what she thought her sister had prepared for her and asked her to try to guess. Isabel asked to let her smell it, and Ray let her do so, asking her to close her eyes. After sniffing, Isabel complimented the aroma and asked if she had made cookies. Rachel said she was right and asked Isabel to try one, and the girl took a mint cookie. The girl exclaimed how delicious it was, and Rachel was glad that she liked the mint chocolate she added. The little girl said that she was very happy that her sister baked cookies for her and said that she was very good. Rachel sweetly replied to her sister that she, Isabel, was also very good to her, while the girl ate cookies. But then Isabel was overcome with memories of how she had become ill because of the nuts. Her brother worriedly said that she would never be able to eat nuts again, and the girl, crying, agreed with her brother that she would not eat them anymore because she was afraid of dying. But her sister baked these cookies especially for her, and if she doesn't eat them, she will doubt her. And she constantly hears from everywhere that her sister is not capable of anything. If she can be patient, her little sister will receive praise. Rachel asked the little girl how she felt about it, and the girl wanted to answer, but suddenly began to choke. The household members came running to the crash of the falling cookie box and the noise, and saw the lady on the floor. People were shouting for a doctor because she needed immediate help, and Rachel cowered in horror. But then the Count came up to her, and looking at the floor in horror, asked Rachel if Isabel had eaten anything with nuts. She didn't know that Isabel had a nut allergy. It was never mentioned in the original story. But did Rachel really know anything about her? And the Count and Raymond shouted at her. Before leaving, he turned around and looked at her with particular disappointment. They all gave up on her at that moment. While the girl was thinking about this, Daniel tried to call her, asking if she was okay. The guy said that he brought what she asked for, and asked if it was related to the fact that her bakery was temporarily closed. He thought that this might also be connected with the fact that there were some suspicious individuals near her bakery. Most likely he saw her brother there, but Daniel thought that even though the flow had decreased, he decided that the guards should remain. The thing was that the number of people decreased, not increased. Everyone was sure that her bakery would soon close. When she suddenly asked if he had tried the madeleines, he came suddenly, and she only got out a few pieces. But Daniel said he doesn't eat untested food, so Rachel decided to eat first. Seeing that Rachel was fine, and that she had already eaten it herself, he now tried it too and was delighted. Starting tomorrow, she was going to make madeleines with condensed milk and asked if he wanted to know the recipe. Surprised, Daniel asked if she would tell him if he wanted, and Ray replied that if he paid, yes. She needed to expand, and Daniel had heard that she had absolutely no talent for business, but that was not true at all. But be that as it may, he suggested moving on to their business. Lately, he had seen the products of her bakery everywhere. He also said that he heard that she had become famous among the aristocrats, and Ray asked again in surprise. And Daniel confirmed this by saying that the former Duchess of Hesse, in particular, highly appreciated her. He asked if she could be connected to her in any way, but Rachel had absolutely no connection to her. If she could meet her, she would do it faster than anyone else, building relationships with the best bread consumer and VIP clients. It was suspicious then. It would be better to remain extremely calm, because perhaps the Duke was watching them. At the end of the conversation, and after eating everything, Daniel also promised to support her in opening new stores. Rachel replied that she always preferred the better deal, but things seemed to be going well for them. Daniel agreed, but now he had to take care of his personal business, which he needed to complete by dawn. Noticing her opponent's tired state, Rachel asked Daniel to wait and handed him the basket. The girl asked me to take this with me, saying that work is work, but I also need to take care of myself. That's why I asked the guy to eat later. Without skipping meals, Daniel's cheeks turned red. Taking the basket, he thanked Rachel and said that he would consider these Madeline's payment for what she had asked him to get for herself. The medicinal herbs she asked for, she will see them today before sunrise. The parcels with herbs arrived at the bakery, and Ray got to work thinking that it should have the same effect as in the original. But the smell was really disgusting. It would be difficult to eat it, so it was time to diversify the menu. So the girl decided to bake blueberry bread, for which she needed bread ingredients and blueberries. It is prepared in the same way as regular soft bread. Sift the flour and knead the dough. Wash fresh blueberries thoroughly and let the water drain. Then mix with the dough. Place in a mold and bake. When everything was ready, she collected the bread and went to the count. But as soon as she stepped over the threshold, her brother met her. Looking down at her with irritation, he asked how she still had the conscience to come here after what she had done. But clutching the basket in her hand, Rachel frowned and told Raymond to move away, saying that she had brought food for Isabel. Coming down to Rachel, he called her crazy and, baring his teeth, asked if she had decided to finish off Isabel this time. No, Rachel answered firmly. She brought her something that would help her cope with her allergies. But the next moment, Raymond hit the girl in the face and angrily asked why she even thought he would believe her. A shocked Rachel asked him to believe her for once, because she was also his younger sister and did not want to harm Isabel. But then the words came out like this, when Raymond said that he had never considered her his little sister until that moment. He shouted at her to get out right now and not to dare come here again, because he didn't want to see her anymore. But the next moment, the trembling in Rachel's hands subsided, and clenching her fist, she hit her brother on the cheek with the basket. And she screamed at him in response, saying that he thought so highly of himself, and that if he continued to make Isabel's life difficult like this, she would do it again. She screamed that she sincerely felt sorry for their younger sister, and that was why her sister and brother always did everything wrong. Sitting on the floor, Raymond shouted that Isabel would only be happy without her, and Ray shouted at him not to make her laugh. If that's the case, then why did Isabel come to her? She shouted at the end, when suddenly a question rang out about what all the noise was about. The children froze and fell silent when they saw their father approaching and asking Rachel what she was going to feed Isabel. Surprised, the girl told everyone everything. The composition included rare medicinal herbs that were difficult to find. But despite the unusual combination, the doctor was unclear how she came up with the idea of mixing these ingredients. She replied that the pharmacist, a customer, had given her this recipe in exchange for many services rendered to him. In fact, this medicine was invented for Uriah, the main character of the novel, which Daniel desperately invented. The Duke thought, and his son said, that Rachel was trying to slip them a medicine that even their doctor didn't know about. Raymond believed that this absolutely could not be allowed, and immediately the servants began to whisper about trusting Ray. They thought she was deliberately deceiving them, because it was Mistress Rachel who was going to kill Mistress Isabel. No, she would like to say that all this is not so, but would anyone here believe her? But to her surprise, the Count said that this was the last time. If this medicine did not have the properties she was talking about, then she was no longer his daughter. And then this day will be the last one she sets foot in this house, the last one she will receive any trust from the family. Be that as it may, she had already put Isabel in danger, so he couldn't completely trust her now. She would have to prove the opposite in practice, and by saying this, her father only hoped that Rachel understood this. But soon the baby got to her feet, and internally, Rachel experienced rather mixed feelings. But as she carefully poured medicine for her sister, she understood that this day had definitely been long and difficult. After this, new rumors began to circulate among the servants that Mistress Rachel had made Isabel recover. Rachel asked if she was glad that she was getting better, And Isabel, hugging her sister, replied that she was especially glad that she had come, but she wanted to admit that her brother told her that she shouldn't eat peanuts, walnuts, or any nuts at all. And trembling, she said that she ate it anyway and apologized. But Ray assured that everything was fine, because everything ended well. Stroking his head, Rachel said that even her little sister couldn't stand pain and asked why he did it. And then Isabel admitted that she thought that, after this, people would no longer say bad things about her. And while Ray was trying to comprehend this, Isabel noticed that they were being brought the blueberry bread she had brought her. Isabel tried it only once, but it was very tasty, and the maid also praised her outstanding skills. The maid said she had no idea why she found herself at the center of those sad rumors. Rachel gave her a dark look and thought that now that Isabel was feeling better, it was time to find out about that too. Be that as it may, the girl did not think that these were just defamatory rumors. The servant reported that he had brought his lordship afternoon desserts, yuzu cake and raspberry cake. Duke Cloud Gesson asked that since everything was ready, tea be served to them, and the boy, obeying the master, stepped away. The man said he was impatient and heard that if you come to the Duke's house, you are sure to try some kind of dessert. Cloud replied, his older sister's insight being her strong point for the most part. He replied that it was all because this was his strong point, and that their maid even took an example from him. The man was grateful for the investment in the accessories business and promised to do everything in his power. But then dessert was served. This raspberry jam sits so perfectly between the biscuits, creating a sophisticated taste. If such a cake could be purchased somewhere, he would gladly do so. The cupcake was also amazing. He praised the perfect combination of aroma and delicate texture, although he was not very fond of cakes, at which point the Duke pursed his lips. He slammed the table and said menacingly that he had remembered an urgent matter and suggested that the Count end the conversation there. They had not yet reached a final agreement on cooperation, but seeing the expression on the Duke's face, the Count fearfully agreed with him. As soon as he left, Duke Cloud took the uneaten desserts with him on a napkin and retired to his office. The desserts tasted divine, but he was still not satisfied with them when he remembered the advertisement. Rachel's Bakery, thanks to his mother. Cloud now had a reason to go there, but it recently closed, and he wondered why. At this time, Marta screamed that even if she tortured her, she still wouldn't be able to say anything, and didn't know anything about the story with the pond. As she said before, she is just a person working for Mr. Raymond, and even so it would be difficult to say anything. She was just walking around listening to various rumors. But then Rachel placed a gold earring with a ruby in front of Martha, and she immediately replied that in fact she needed to go around and spread rumors, since she was on friendly terms with many in the mansion. But even so, the truth did not know anything. But there is someone who gives the rumors special credibility, confirming them. Rachel tried the same tactic, handing over more decorations, and Martha replied that she had heard that Dari, the maid, did that. The girl said that she really liked her love for money, that is, for honesty, and Marta became embarrassed. Be that as it may, Dari confirmed these rumors. That day, Isabel and Raymond were walking together. While the young gentleman walked away from Madame Isabel a little, she decided to look at the fish in the pond. But suddenly, Mistress Rachel appeared there and pushed Mistress Isabel into the pond. That was the rumor. Public opinion of her in the mansion was shaken, and at the height of the rumors, she was given a separate room to feel safe. She still uses the room. Then Marta told the lady the truth, and she called Dari for a talk. Dari asked what brought her to such an inappropriate place. Rachel replied that she just wanted to ask about what happened at the pond. Marta was curious about how much money she also received, and Dari asked how she dared to say such a thing in front of the lady. How dare she say such a thing? Rachel asked, saying that she knew she was the one who had been lying to everyone. Dari grinned and asked the lady how she could say such a thing, since she had seen everything with her own eyes. She asked whether she accused the witness of the incident of slander, and how disappointed the other gentlemen were in her. She is not only an adopted daughter, but also the mistress of this servant, and she allows herself to be criticized so brazenly. But then Martha said that she heard that, although she was in the garden, she was quite far from the pond. Dari asked if she had seen her in the garden. Marta had not seen her personally, but that day the head maid was urgently looking for a porter boy. It turned out that some man had come to talk to the Count about business, and the boy said that he had seen her with a guest in the garden. It might have been one of the domestic servants, but whatever the case, everything proved that Mistress Rachel could not have done this. The boy thought that he might have been mistaken, but he could always ask the Count to contact that guest and find out everything. Dari was trembling, and Ray proudly declared that she would give her a chance to avoid being expelled from the mansion and asked who asked her to tell this false story. Mrs. Rachel is not Madame's biological daughter and told Madame about all this only before her death. The servants did not understand why they should call this girl mistress and were worried that this commoner would do something to Isabel. They thought that Madame was also worried about this, which is why she told them so late. They remembered that the Marchioness Sylvia remained at Madame's bedside. She seemed to want to ask her close friend for a favor, probably to ensure that the commoner did not harm Madame Isabel. In the Count's residence of Roseltane, there lives a commoner who is no different from them. This is unacceptable. He lives in luxury, doing everything by force. It's arbitrariness. At that moment, Rachel came to correct the report. The man asked, "So she thinks that part of the report needs to be corrected. But where did she even hear these false rumors?" Rachel asked if there was anything that needed to be fixed. Maybe they should ask Dari about it. There were definitely things that needed to be changed. For example, there was no clause that would talk about concluding a secret deal. However, then Dari turned to Ms. Rachel and said that the thing is that it was all a lie. Bowing, she said that in fact, she was not at the scene of the incident and apologized to the lady. Frowning, Rachel thanked Dari for finally deciding to tell the truth. So she asked her to tell about the one who asked her to lie about everything, but then the man called out to the lady. In response, the girl screamed at him and asked if it was really so terrible that she was only an adopted daughter. They knew everything. She became a member of the Roseltane family, although her true origins remained unknown. She screamed that she had become an eyesore for the servants, her voice trembling. She had heard what they said behind her back more than once. Not once, not even twice. But then the door opened, and Rachel turned around and said that until that moment, she hadn't thought that she should worry about this. And yes, it's true. In this family, she is only an adopted daughter. She said this as if addressing Raymond. Marta brought him at Ray's request, but it was impossible to ignore the fact that a misunderstanding had occurred due to false rumors. When Raymond asked if she had simply bribed the maid, Rachel was simply taken aback by his statement. He started to walk forward, but then Isabel blocked Rachel's path and shouted that her sister had tried to catch her when she slipped. It was no one's fault that this happened. Isabel always said so, but for some reason, no one ever believed her. No matter how kind a person he is, he can't let this go unpunished. She will take advantage of the opportunity and get the truth. She turned to her brother and said that she was not trying to shield her sister, but was simply telling the truth. As far as the girl remembered, in the original story, Isabel also didn't like her sister Rachel from the very beginning. But maybe it was because the people around her kept saying mean things, so Isabel could believe that her sister was really a bad person. But now the little girl looked at her with hope. Finally, a smile appeared on Rachel's face, and, feeling moved, she thanked Isabel for believing in her. Count Roseltane sat at the table in the study and, sighing heavily, asked where the butler was now. The servant replied that since nothing was yet known for certain regarding that matter, he was temporarily locked in the room. He received a report, and it said that some maid, presumably Dari, was seen in a different place and not near the pond. So Rachel had been set up after all, the Count said. He couldn't believe that something like this had happened right in their home. The servant, in an apology, wanted to remind him that if this matter was made public outside the mansion, their reputation would be shaken. He could only punish the butler accordingly. But over time, the lady's name would naturally be cleared anyway. The Count reflected on this as he recalled his walk through the mansion when he suddenly met the doctor. Then, noticing the bread from Isabel's room in his hands, he asked where he was taking it. The man said that Ms. Rachel had brought it, and he wasn't sure if it was safe, so he decided to throw it away. The Count took the tray from him, saying that he would do everything himself, and went to his daughter's room, where he also found Rachel. The girl woke up her little sister and said that when she woke up, her little sister would bake a lot of delicious bread for her. Then, looking at the bread, he tried it and realized that it was delicious. so now he said that they would conduct an investigation again. Isabel said it was an accident, but there was someone who set Rachel up. He, as the head of the house, will personally take up this matter, and moreover, will make this matter public beyond the family so that everyone knows about what happened. On the opening day, Rachel sold good morning bread to a customer and was finally left alone. She believed that an abrupt closure right after opening would hit her business hard, but she just needed to be prepared for such situations. After all, the future super VIP guest would be the Duke of Gessen himself. But first, the muffins had to be prepared. But she has to use decorations to make them look like cupcakes, and the main ingredient will be strawberries, the Duke's favorite treat. After a while, Rachel heard the sound of a bell and informed the gentleman that the bakery was already closed. But seeing the face of her guest, she said that she was going to close, but not yet, and greeted him. Duke Cloud Gessen is a great knight of the north, defending the borders of the empire from monsters and invaders. But it seems I recently ran into a huge problem. People were asking why it wouldn't be possible to transfer it. Doesn't the Duke only accept edible gifts? They replied that the Duke was very grateful to them for this generous gift. But, unfortunately, his master no longer has any interest in desserts, he answered reservedly. He heard this from the previous butler. All this time he accepted them because he couldn't help but take them, since they were still food. And he is very sorry. He just wants to do everything in his power for the convenience of the master, and the man understood everything. The Duke really did have an amazing butler, but Cloud himself was not at all happy about it. His emergency help, no savings for desserts. Since then, he has not recharged with sweets even once. He even unconsciously stopped eating sweets altogether. But it was good that she was working again. Rachel apologized for the mess. She said he could look around for now. But then the Duke saw the soft blueberry bread with cream cheese and realized she had taste. And Rachel herself asked if he wanted to try what she had just cooked. She doesn't have tables yet, so we'll have to taste it right at the counter. But the guy didn't mind at all. However, here she served a muffin with strawberry whipped cream and fresh strawberries. Surprising Cloud. The golden muffin is topped with sweet strawberry whipped cream and topped with fresh strawberries. The combination was bound to be delicious, and he hoped it would be soft but chewy. However, just after tasting this dessert, Cloud was overwhelmed with new sensations and the taste of paradise. Then Rachel called out to the gentleman, and he, coming to his senses, modestly asked to be allowed to buy some of these. As she handed him the box, she asked how many he would like to order. Pre-orders were available. And of course, they have a packaging service which makes shipping large orders easier, so why not offer that? They also have a loyalty system with different levels, and there are special gifts for their VIP clients. And each time the gifts are different, but they are always very special desserts, and the guy was interested in this. He said excitedly that he wanted to make a large order of what they value most here. And so, sometime later, Cloud was sitting at home, eating desserts that he had previously ordered for delivery. For an order of 20 boxes, each containing 5 items, they prepared pasta for him. However, Cloud didn't know what a macaron was, and Rachel explained in surprise that it looked something like a dakwoi, a dense meringue with a crust and a layer between them. There are many types with different fillings. The name alone sounds delicious, and after the explanation, it interested the Duke even more. The maids discovered this unusual dessert from Rachel's bakery, thinking they were beautiful cookies. "What difference does it make?" they said, since they were prepared by a girl who is called the incarnation of the witch, Margarita herself. Others said that everything she makes is delicious. They are the best in the kitchen, so they should try it and give a verdict. Another replied that they would judge the dessert with all severity, and the third agreed with them. But only after trying it did we realize how incredible and impossible its taste was. Sweet but not greasy, crispy, soft, and chewy all at once, and looking cute too. This dessert is absolutely amazing. Then the lady noticed that her madam looked worried, and she asked if it was very noticeable. They explained to her that she simply didn't usually sigh that often, but the lady replied that she shouldn't worry. She asked Owen, because she was interested in something. She said that she bought these cookies at Rachel's bakery. But recently, she heard from the servants that the bakery owner, Rachel Roseltine, was called the Countess of Shame. She asked if it was true, and Owen replied that she had been interested in the same question and had therefore tried to find out everything. She has quite a bad reputation. And everywhere, the name Rachel Roseltine has already become a household word. After listening, the lady thanked Owen for her help and conversation and asked her to have a good rest. Being not only a former duchess, but also the manager of an orphanage, she was particularly complimentary about this bakery. But who would have thought that in reality, she was controlled by such an evil person? But the Rachel she saw could not be called that. So which of these is true? But after trying the pasta, I was amazed that it was made from soy flour. I think she said that she was going to try making something out of it, and then everyone would enjoy the taste. And smiling softly at this, the former duchess thought that perhaps she should check everything again. Martha asked the lady to trust her, saying that for an hourly wage she would work hard. Rachel laughed and said that she had already prepared everything and asked that she simply count the baked goods and arrange them. Rachel went out for a walk happily, thinking that her mood was much better today, and all because of Duke Gesson. Thanks to his huge orders, she acquired a reliable financial cushion. Daniel, dressed to the nines, greeted Lady Rachel cheerfully and informed her that he had invited her because he had good news. Unfortunately, Robert won't be with them, so he will tell everything in person. Ray realized that today he is in the role of Daniel and thought how hard it is for him. However, she arrived in such an inappropriate carriage and got drunk. Surely Count Roseltane didn't have something more luxurious. Ray replied that she had come straight from work and had used the carriage service and had thought about its image. In the role of Robert, he is harsh, stubborn, and now his opposite. If she didn't know the original story, she wouldn't have thought that it was the same person. But when they met for the first time just the day before yesterday, he didn't even offer her a cup, which means she has now become an important business partner. Ray asked what news had made him invite her straight to the Danov mansion, and Daniel replied that she would be glad to. And all because everything happened just as she said. High-purity diamonds were discovered in that mine. But to sell such diamonds at high prices, master craftsmen were needed, and Rachel asked if he would approach Count Dishon. However, there was another problem. Rachel said in surprise that she had heard that his family were the greatest masters of jewelry making. But Daniel was worried about Duke Gesson. It seemed to him that he suspected them of something. He learned that the Duke had recently shown some interest in the affairs of Count Dishon's family, although they had not really discussed anything. But his security guards reported that he had been visiting her bakery after closing, and thought he was doing it on purpose. Rachel was sorry that the Duke's intentions had been misinterpreted, but she had not wanted to involve Count Dishon in the first place. In fact, this Count is a swindler with a bad character. But it would be nice to know who the heroine ultimately entrusted this job to. But the original story didn't mention that, so the focus had to be on what she could do first. Then the girl asked to find out about the other master, because if the Duke suspected them, then everything could lead to an arrest. It sounded like her, and yet he said he would give him the business card if he didn't find out anything, but for now they should stop mining. Instead, it would be better to quickly open a second bakery. She would give him the money immediately after mining the diamonds. His main goal was to get rid of the wheat stocks as quickly as possible, so he would rent her the remaining vacant building on the property for free. But she understood that she couldn't use it for free forever, so she suggested agreeing on a monthly payment right away. But she had not yet won his trust enough to agree verbally. But Ray replied that a written agreement was needed regardless. While cleaning, Marta sang a song about how good it was when the mistress gave her money. But if she delayed payment, she would leave her immediately. Although she would receive the payment she owed anyway, she suddenly said hello to Alice, whom she had not seen for a long time. The girl, looking at her friend in horror, asked Martha with a trembling voice if she worked in this villain's store. After her sister's story, the girls couldn't believe that it was Marta, who was blinded by money. They asked their sister if she was still in contact with someone like that, because it didn't seem right that she was ready to do anything for money. Alice agreed with them, but smilingly said that she always pursed her lips so cutely when she talked about money. A few months earlier, Martha had told her that she would be starting work for Mistress Rachel and had volunteered herself. Alice was worried about why she needed this. She heard that this lady was surrounded by very bad rumors, even in her family's mansion. But Martha only spoke admiringly, clasping her hands to her chest, saying that she would be her personal servant and would receive money. After these words, he and Martha did not see each other for some time, as they were both busy, and she thought Rachel was making fun of her, forcing her to figure out how to make money by any means necessary. Martha would answer the lady that in this way she could hurt many people, and then she would shower her with money. And then Martha, with a sparkle in her eyes, asked the lady to trust her, because she would throw the whole world at her feet. Alice was very worried that her friend was ready to go to such lengths and stoop so low for the sake of money. But at the actual meeting, Martha reassured the worried and anxious Alice, telling her that she was fine. And in general, she began to work for the mistress again. But suddenly, she noticed a visitor and greeted her at Rachel's bakery, and she suggested that they come in and then talk. But then Alice turned to the visitor. For some reason, she had the feeling that she knew this woman. Maybe it was her imagination. But the director of the orphanage was standing at the threshold. It turned out that her mistress was not bad at all, and it even turned out that the whole thing was inflated by the butler of her house himself. He bribed the maid and brought various charges against the lady, and was always proud of the fact that his family had served the aristocracy for generations. And apparently, he was very upset that he was forced to serve their adopted daughter, a commoner. Alice asked how the Count allowed this. Martha replied that he ignored everything. Young Mr. Roseltane could not stand to see his mistress. The former Duchess observed and overheard all the other rumors and their refutations in dialogue. But then a visitor entered the bakery with a clang, and Martha greeted the guest kindly. But then Alice thought about the clients who had just come in. She felt like she had seen them somewhere. But then the young man accidentally touched the lady and wanted to apologize. And when she wanted to answer, they suddenly froze, recognizing each other. However, they seemed too suspicious to Martha, and she became tense, keeping an eye on the customers. The girl was worried that she had just witnessed some illegal transactions. She remembered Rachel's words about how, if any suspicious client came in, she would leave through the back door. She knows that there is a warehouse behind, and all she needs to do is go out and call the security guard who is standing there. Taking Alice's hands, she leaned closer and asked her friend to watch the counter for a while. And she would step away for a while and asked her to do the packing for now. And Martha ran away. Alice thought she must have just gone to the bathroom quickly and then glanced at the sample packaging on the table. And if these suspicious people talk to her while she is gone, what will she do? Alice worried. But suddenly, she shuddered at the ringing of the bell and became worried that another suspicious person had arrived. But then she was delighted to see a cute, bunny-like girl come in and greet her at Rachel's bakery. Rachel said it was packaged perfectly, and Alice thanked her, asking if she was looking for something specific. But the owner of the establishment only sweetly replied that she was not looking and headed to the second floor of the establishment. Watching her, Alice was worried whether clients could go in there. But then Martha appeared with the guards. Pointing to the customers, she called them suspicious types, but she was not sure. But it seemed that they had come to harm the lady. The next moment, Cloud ran away, and Martha screamed why he was running away. Now he was really suspicious. And the Duchess told the guard that she had come in the role of the director of the orphanage and explained the situation to him. And Alice herself, watching this mess in horror, wondered what kind of things were happening in this bakery. On the street, Martha lost her guard and asked where those strange guys were, indignantly saying that she would give them a good beating later. Having decided to go inside, she happily turned to Alice and asked if she had already packed all the boxes. The girl nodded. But since she was handling everything, Martha decided to leave the store to her and go to bed and praised her. After a while, Alice, while cleaning the bakery, asked Martha about the stories they had talked about. She asked if this meant that all the rumors about her mistress were just false. Martha thought they were rather dubious, because even those maids who allegedly witnessed her atrocities often said contradictory things. And then, if you think about it, even before the opening of this bakery, she never behaved badly in front of it. And when she allegedly pushed Madame Isabel, she wanted to finally exclaim, but this too turned out to be a false accusation. So what happens in the end? Mrs. Rachel did not commit any evil deeds, but only became a victim of vile rumors about herself. She, too, had previously only believed what Chen and Raymond said, so she was sure that the lady was evil and vicious. And she is also very skillful with money. Rachel, listening to this, thought that ultimately, the best way to win Martha's heart is money. But suddenly, she finally noticed a guest in the hall and wondered in surprise if it was Katerina. But then the lady asked to pay her bill and order more bread, and Marta replied that she would help her. The former duchess wanted to order everything and asked if she could buy all the bread that was currently in stock in the store, and she would like them to deliver all this to the orphanage that is located nearby. And then Martha animatedly replied that she would do everything, and, having thanked the lady, ran away, saying that she would immediately prepare everything. Alice thought she really liked the bread from this bakery, and the lady replied that she did, and that she knew the owner well. She asked if they had sold blueberry bread yesterday, but Martha replied that the lady was busy with pasta, so it wasn't sold. "That's how it is?" she asked, and told that yesterday Mrs. Rachel donated blueberry bread to their shelter. If this is true, then did the lady really bake this bread specifically to donate to the shelter? And the lady confirmed this. As far as she understood, Mrs. Rachel never donated leftover bread, but always sent them fresh bread. A truly kind person. And afterward, the Duchess apologized, because she had unwittingly overheard their recent conversation. Martha said that she had everything ready for delivery, and the lady thanked the young lady, and Alice thought that she was a good person. But then Rachel came down to her, and Alice apologized to the lady and reported that literally all the bread had just been sold out. But then the girl said that she heard that her name was Alice, and told her that she was the owner of this place, Rachel. Alice said she didn't know it, but it was an honor for her. Rachel said she wasn't that important, and asked him not to overdo it. It was an honor for Ray to see how deftly she handled the packaging, and asked what exactly she did. She said that she worked in the house of Duke Gesson, and worked as a kitchen assistant along with her younger sisters. And then Rachel asked if she could consider working in her bakery because she was looking for someone like her. She reported on her salary, bonuses, and allowances, and there will also be overtime pay and severance pay. Alice asked, confused and surprised, if she was telling her this, and Ray replied that, first of all, she would pay her properly for today. She hoped that Alice would agree to accept her offer, but now she had to go. Left alone with her impressions, Alice thought what a wonderful Mrs. Rachel was. Rachel didn't know how many times she had walked around the area, but she couldn't figure out where her potential client had gone. He probably just returned to his mansion, and it was unlikely that he would return to her bakery now, she reasoned. But then the girl noticed that a warm wind had blown the ribbon off her head, and that someone had picked it up. Duke Cloud Geeson stood before her, and, handing over a snow-white ribbon, told Rachel Rosaltine that she had dropped it. Rachel's cheeks flushed, but then she thanked her golden customer, and she modestly said that next time she would definitely give him a big gift with delivery. Suddenly, waking up, I thought that I had to pretend that I didn't know her at all, because I supposedly didn't yet know who was hiding behind the client's identity. After pausing for a moment and thinking about how to get out of this situation, she said that she wanted to say something else, and the Duke had a premonition that they both knew each other's identities. So he knew she was Rachel. She hardly ever goes to parties, and he had never seen her, and probably overheard Martha and Alice talking. She didn't try to hide it, and said that they had never met, and asked how he knew. You have to pretend they're at least a little surprised. This is a potential VIP client, and it would be great to manage them. She asked him if he liked the pasta he ordered. She made sure to put more care into his box. Remembering about the macarons, Cloud answered awkwardly, "Strawberries." It was delicious. Rachel remembered that there were a lot of strawberry macarons. Then Cloud asked how she knew he liked strawberries, and she replied that his gaze never left hers. Scratching his neck, the guy awkwardly said again that they were very tasty and sweet. Still, Cloud wasn't very detailed in his expressions, although he had an amazing sense of taste when it came to desserts. Even in the original story, he wasn't as popular compared to the soft-spoken Daniel or the bad boy Crown Prince. But while the other two were driven by money and power, he was the only one who competed sincerely and had a real love for desserts. Martha asked the lady if she was planning to sew herself a dress for the ball this spring. "What is she talking about?" Rachel asked as she rolled out the dough, and Martha wondered if what she was working on had anything to do with the ball. But Rachel replied that it was just practice and thought she would sew it last time, and Martha asked if she would go to the boutique. Their design had been popular lately, but Rachel doubted it, and Martha assumed it was because of that incident. Then Rachel came to the boutique, but angrily asked Martha to get rid of the dress immediately. The saleswoman exclaimed in horror that last time she said she liked the design. However, The girl proudly declared that if she says that she doesn't like it now, then she doesn't like it. It's her taste. But then the guy clenched his fists and said irritably, "Apparently commoners don't have good taste." Rachel turned to look at him in surprise, and the salesman suddenly realized what he had just said. And while the girl pounced on the guy with punches, Marta still thought that she would have to go and throw him out. But suddenly, I noticed the frills and gemstones on this dress, and thought that they looked very expensive. As he left, the guy indignantly thought that he had made a careless remark without realizing it. He needed to apologize and make amends for the situation. But then, he saw a familiar fabric in the maid's hands, and wondered if this was the dress he had created. He excitedly asked who had told her to carry it, and Martha sweetly replied that Miss Rachel had told her to throw it away. After that, the tailor shouted that he would not forgive Rachel Rosaltine. Martha told her sweetly. But then Rachel thought hard. Wasn't Martha the instigator? But what's done is done. Didn't Jack say that at the ball this spring he would attract the Empress's attention? And then he continued to climb the career ladder and attracted the attention of the heroine, returning his place in the boutique. After that, he took revenge on her, and she planned to block him in advance and suddenly thought about it. Rachel said that if she could get the Empress's attention, it would be great karma. And then Martha asked why not take advantage of the upcoming ball, an event dedicated to the 500th anniversary of the founding of the empire. She heard that the Empress had put a lot of effort into it, and that it was unlike previous balls where many young people had attended. This time, there would be a lot of middle-aged and older people, and she also heard that the Count would be going too. Rachel agreed with the maid, but suddenly thought in horror and asked how she knew about this. But Martha, smiling enthusiastically and innocently, asked if everyone around her was talking about it. Rachel had thought so for a long time, but Martu was so good at collecting information that she didn't realize its value. So Ray said that since she had a good idea, she deserved a reward, and she should keep Martha close from now on. The former Duchess was strolling through the streets towards the bakery when suddenly her attention was drawn to Rachel. The girl was sitting in the yard and diligently pulling weeds when she responded to Director Katerina and greeted her. The lady asked if she was currently removing the weeds alone and had not called anyone, but Rachel replied that she had decided to pull them out herself. She needed to train, and besides, hiring people might be a bit expensive for her. Then, Katerina asked what bread she would recommend for the next week, because she wanted to try something new, if there was one. Rachel popped into the bakery for a minute and handed over a tray, asking if she could have a taste of it. Looking at the product with interest, Katerina asked if this was the new Injomi macaron that had been released. It was him and Ray who was still finalizing the recipe, but even so, the lady wanted to try it right now. The soy flour makes it difficult to eat neatly, but Miss Katerina ate it very elegantly, and suddenly she sighed in surprise. It was truly amazing, the nutty and soft taste combined making it richer. It's not too sweet because it's easy to eat without feeling heavy, and Ray praised her for the effort. And then Rachel pulled out an ad, proudly announcing that she was planning a special promotion for pasta. Katerina asked if pasta wasn't already popular among different age groups. That's true, but because the powder crumbles, it's hard to eat, and maybe their individual recognition isn't as high as she thought. So she's tweaked them a bit, her goal being to become so famous that she'll one day get an offer to host a big event. So, she strives for fame, the director asked with a gasp, and said that she would support her, and that she would definitely succeed. First, it was necessary to prepare the meringue, and then sift the powder and mix it in the right amount. After this, place it in a pastry bag and pipe it little by little, baking while monitoring the temperature. Now make the cream by adding boiled syrup. Put it on the meringue and finally sprinkle with soy powder. Turn each one over many times, and you will have countless pasta, and the pasta maker is ready. It was strange, no matter how much they cooked. She never thought it would be such a success. Here, Gray asked the boss if she was okay, saying that he had washed all the pots in the yard. Rachel said that was enough work for today, and, thanking him, gave him some pasta as a reward. Gray happily gobbled it up, and Rachel thought that he was part of their team and really loved bread. Just then, another security guard came into the bakery, speaking loudly, and asked Miss Rachel if she was okay and if she was sick. He seemed to be shouting that she looked even more exhausted than usual, but the girl said in surprise that she had simply gotten a lot of powder on her. Right, he asked. He didn't really understand this and wanted to report that he had noticed suspicious individuals nearby. When asked by the boss, he replied that they were looking for something called injomi, a very suspicious word. Then Rachel angrily yelled at him, saying that it was the name of a dessert covered in soy powder. They were customers, so Rachel asked him not to drive them away, but just to try it himself, but he refused. But then Ray, having made sure that Mr. Hand was not allergic, immediately shoved the pasta into his mouth. And after trying it, he said that this taste was worth paying for properly, and that he had to protect Injomi, that is, the boss's store. He said he would help with the cleaning first, and although it wasn't necessary to go that far, Ray thought it was better to leave it that way. But Martha came to them and told the lady that a letter had arrived from the palace. It looked like an invitation to a spring ball, and Rachel asked why it had arrived at a bakery and not the Earl's mansion. But then Martha explained that the letter was addressed to Rachel's bakery, and not directly to the young lady. The letter stated that they would like to discuss the injomi macarons from her bakery, and asked that they get in touch. After reading this, Rachel was surprised, and wondered if this was really an offer to supply the imperial palace. Upon learning that the boss had been offered a contract, Hand loudly asked if they were hiring a chef directly for the royal family. Martha yelled at him to be quiet and told Miss that she had hit the nail on the head. They would probably have to close the store for a while. And they may have to hire temporary help in the kitchen. Obviously, this event was planned, but she didn't expect the results to appear as quickly as they did, as she had no connections in the palace. Katerina took charge of this, promising to support her, and Martha told Miss that she must be very lucky. It was surprising, but whatever the case, it didn't matter, and she needed to write an answer urgently. Rachel apologized for the late visit, but the head maid said that everything was fine, as she had already said that they would find a convenient time. The lady suggested that she was probably curious as to why the royal family had come to supply her bakery. As she knew, there would be guests of all ages at this ball, and there was no dessert that would suit them better than injomi macarons. They said they might consider a permanent contract if the feedback was good. Rachel asked if she could set the criteria, and then she voiced the condition that all the macarons at the ball would be sold out. She was about to say that it would be difficult for her to agree, but then Rachel announced that she had signed and asked for beautiful plates to be laid out. The head maid was very shocked that Rachel signed a contract without negotiating on harsh terms, but Rachel was confident that they would be able to empty the plates and that it would actually be good publicity for the new product. She asked if it was due to her recognition of the taste and quality of the injomi macarons and was happy to prepare the dessert to their standards. This question was asked in order to gain an advantage in the contract. She answered respectfully, without devaluing the pasta. She manages business as well as reputation well, and so the maid suggested moving on to the main topic. The owner met Lady Rachel in the Sabrel boutique and asked her to go to the VIP room. The girl said that they had not seen each other for a long time. The man didn't realize that she would come in person and heard that she was busy with the bakery business, but that's why Rachel came to say hello. Then he asked if she would wear something extravagant to this ball, but this time she was thinking about a more modest style. Then the man said that he would bring her other catalogs and wondered what was happening to a person who was far from modest. Sabrel Boutique. Hori is the head designer here and an influential figure in the history of the industry. He is modest but incredibly skilled, and he prefers stable, safe styles. Usually, he just slightly adapts new trends, but after the heroine merged with another boutique, he faded into the background. However, she would not lose. The conversation was about a beautiful model, and Rachel said that she had come to propose. Like before, he asked. When she asked to be made more attractive, Ray put it down to circumstances. First, she wanted him to see the gift she brought, and when Hori opened the box, he found cookies. Rachel confirmed that these were frosted cookies, where she first mixed the ingredients well to make the dough. Then I shaped them and baked them, and finally added icing on top. So, Hori asked. It was she who came up with the design, and Rachel said that these cookies were for him. The man realized this. Such a design had not occurred to him, although he still felt something was missing. And then Rachel told Hori that she would like to propose a collaboration using this design and frosted cookies. She would like to see his idea, which he brought to life well, and it would really look beautiful with the delicate embroidery of the boutique. It would be nice to create a shoulderless design with a curve below the collarbone, and he was interested in the terms of the contract. Rachel was glad he was thinking positively and said, firstly, they could offer an advance of $500,000 right now. Also, the Roseltine family has influential figures, and their entire family will wear clothes from the Sabrel boutique. However, everyone knew that she and Raymond did not get along, but she asked them not to worry, saying that everyone would definitely wear his clothes. The girl ran into the man's room, and he asked in fear if she had called him, but what had suddenly happened? Rachel came to have a proper talk with him, Mr. Samuel, and will make the most of what she can. Lately, he had heard rumors that Rachel had grown up, but judging by the way she came unannounced, it had to be a lie. He asked Miss Rachel to contact him in advance next time, and the girl told Samuel that she was very sorry. She knew he was busy working for their family, but the situation was urgent enough that she had to come unannounced. It was striking that Rachel apologized so politely and said that next time she would contact him in advance, and he asked why she came. The girl replied that a lot of people have been talking about investments lately, and there really are a lot of unpredictable variables. For example, the Dingo Mine, which was rumored to be a gold mine, but turned out to be a dud. The investors must have suffered more losses. Samuel wondered why she was talking about it. Did she really know that he had invested money there? But how could she know this and ask to get down to business if she just came to talk? But then Rachel interrupted him. She asked about Hector's mine, and the guy asked in surprise if she was talking about the mine that belonged to her. "What are you saying?" Rachel replied with a sweet grin. She recently sold it to Robert Denave, the bank president. "And it's likely there are diamonds there, and investing in it could cover his losses from the Dingo Mine," she explained. "Shouldn't he return the embezzled funds?" she asked, causing Samuel to freeze and anxiously ask how she knew. Rachel explained calmly that the budget allocations she received were different from those recorded. She, a direct descendant of the Roseltine family, and still able to read her family's financial statements, Samuel trembled. He asked. Knowing this, she was not punishing him, but offering a lucrative offer, since what were her intentions? She appreciated his straightforwardness and would like her brother and father to wear outfits from the Sabrella boutique at the upcoming ball. It wasn't difficult, the man reasoned. Sabrel was the best in the area, but there was a feeling that she was helping him, so that's what was happening. Rachel said that she had a personal agreement with Hori and suggested that they start considering each other friends from now on. She will turn a blind eye to his spending, and he will not notice when she interferes in family affairs for personal gain. Samuel said he understood Miss by agreeing to the terms, because she turned out to be more amazing than he thought. On a spring day, Miss Rachel Roseltine and young Master Raymond of the Roseltine family arrived. People in the area were amazed that the Viscount of the Roseltine family and this lady, who were constantly quarreling, suddenly went out together. This beautiful dress features sabre embroidery, and the translucent material is not at all vulgar, but rather complements the look beautifully. The Viscount's outfit is definitely from there too. They say that Miss Roseltine was a terrible villain, but this is an exaggeration. People wondered if she had managed to clear up the misunderstandings with the Viscount, while Raymond, swirling in the dance, irritably asked if that was enough. Rachel asked if she would gamble with Isabel's life. She was already getting all the royalties from the allergy medicine prescription, he said. Even if he gave the valuable recipe to someone, wouldn't it be beneficial to her? That's how he wanted to put himself in a favorable light. After the dance, people approached Raymond, saying that they did not expect him to come, and reported that they watched him with interest. It's good that they naturally moved away from each other. The dress should have made enough of an impression. Lace embellishments on sleeves are trending now, and now everyone will feel that the trend is changing. But now she had more important market research to do. It was pasta. But suddenly, she heard about the arrival of Deneve. Here he arrived as Robert, usually a refined Robert, who does not attend social receptions, unlike his brother Daniel. After their eyes met, Daniel walked towards Rachel, but then she froze, seeing a familiar figure behind him. The Duke of Giesen's arrival was announced, which greatly surprised Rachel, since, according to the original, he usually does not attend banquets. It's weird, in the original, the two only appeared together when the main character showed up, and she had to leave before something else happened. But then Robert called out to Milady and asked if he could invite her to a second dance. The girl agreed to dance and thought that since he came right up to her, it meant he had something to tell her. The Count asked his daughter to bring young Mr. Denave, but she would do this after she had finished her own business. Ray asked if he had anything to say, and Robert said that he didn't want to miss the opportunity to be her second dance partner. They are business partners after all, but Rachel thought her business partner was Daniel, so why did he come as Robert? The guy replied that it was better for the reputation of Rachel's bakery to have the support of both, and Rachel thought that made sense. She already thought that something serious had happened, and Daniel, smiling, said shyly that he still had something to tell her. After everything about Rachel and the diamond mine was decided, the diamonds are mined and bring in a lot of profit. Now they can freely plan their further actions. But Robert, on the contrary, has more work to do, all because of the midges that were attracted to the bakery. Even the emperor, who often stuttered about Robert, became frivolous. He was forced to attend the spring banquet, but given how much interest the emperor pays on the loan every month, he became careless. He needed to show himself, but suddenly his attention was drawn to Rachel's figure, whom no one had invited to a second dance. God, how he felt sorry for her. How could this be? He was dressed so beautifully. What hadn't she heard here? It would be better if they all watched themselves. But then, noticing the banquet table, her face lit up, and the problems instantly evaporated. Yes, she is, he said. His face closed when they finished checking the invitation and then, smiling, walked away. Daniel thought that, unlike other people around him, she genuinely cared about him and he wanted to dance with her. Even if it was reckless, he didn't want others to make fun of her, he thought, as he continued to lead the dance. But if something goes wrong and he can't suddenly confess, then how can he explain his behavior? Daniel was getting uncomfortable, and Rachel asked if he, Robert, thought it was weird. She said that even Duke Gisson, who never goes to banquets, came and he came too. The girl asked if he had come to convey something to the crown prince. The Duke was very close to him. But as Rachel continued to dance with Daniel, she couldn't stop thinking about Cloud continuing to look at her. After that, she noticed him leaving with his lips pursed and quickly said goodbye to Daniel, thanking him for the dance. She wanted to run after the Duke and talk to him, but then the arrival of the luminary of the Tian Empire was announced. They asked to greet His Majesty the Emperor and Her Majesty the Empress, as well as the Crown Prince. Bowing, Rachel thought that now the main character of the original story is the person Rachel likes, and the one who destroyed the Rosaltine family would not see him for the same amount of time. But then she realized that she had lost sight of Cloud. This won't work, she thought, looking back. If the Crown Prince is informed about this, the bakery will be in big trouble. Coming out into the courtyard, Ray said how beautiful the light was, that she wished her bakery had lights like that, but it would cost a pretty penny. She wanted to continue collaborating with potential VIP clients. I wish he would come to the banquet not for the prince's sake. The cool wind made Rachel sneeze. She had been walking for so long and hadn't seen Duke Cloud. But suddenly, a blanket was thrown over her, and Rachel looked up to see the Duke standing in front of her, who asked what she was doing there. It seemed to him that she could not stand the cold, so why was she dressed so lightly? And it seemed that she was completely fearless. The days are cold now, so she should dress warmer, even if it is the imperial palace. It is dangerous to go far. He was so worried, and now she understood that Cloud's words should be taken differently, thanking him for the cape. She was very happy to meet him, and actually had something to say. Cloud winced, but understood what she was talking about. The girl wanted to tell him about the flour in the bakery, but then the Duke asked her to keep it a secret. What? She asked in surprise, and suddenly realizing it, replied that she would, of course, keep it a secret. Okay, the guy answered her. He revealed his secret to Rachel. As it turned out, he hadn't heard anything about flour. On the contrary, he was worried and afraid that people would find out that he loved sweet bakery desserts. After the death of the previous Duke, the servants gathered around Uncle Cloud to protect Mother and the people from those who tried to steal the throne. Cloud became a duke at a very young age, and when he was 14, he decided to go to war himself. Miraculously, he survived it and became the ruling duke, earning authority and respect from others. The desire to become perfect, the sense of responsibility that he put on himself, the main character understood Cloud's feelings. So there was no point in Rachel taking on this role. But still, Gathering her will into a fist, she asked the dear guest to relax. She promised that she would keep her promise, because in the business world, there was nothing more important than them, and she couldn't just leave Cloud. After this, Rachel reached into her dress pocket, because she had heard that if she wrote down 3 things that he liked, it would make him feel better. She handed the Duke a fountain pen, and Cloud said in surprise that he had spoken not of a flower, but of bread. But she replied that it was a secret, and from now on, the marrow flower would be their code word. He could use it instead, and then she would understand right away. And then Cloud smiled and said that he wanted to look at the flowers of marrow. Blushing, Rachel asked the guy to come and see them any time and wondered why she was so nervous. Cloud noticed that her cheeks had turned red, and Rachel, saying that it was natural, said that she had to go. Cloud said goodbye to Rachel and said that he would come look at the marrow flowers when he missed them. While walking through the garden, Cloud suddenly came across the crown prince standing by a tree and bowed to greet him. This was a place where he could be alone when he came to a banquet, as he learned that he often came here. The crown prince heard that he was there, but could not see him at all, and asked if he had seen the lady out. He didn't see the woman because it was too dark, but after that, he said he could go. He felt bad that he was hiding something from him, but Duke Gessen was just the emperor's dog, so it didn't matter what he did. However, for this person to dance with the head of the Citron Bank, she also shared a secret with Duke Gessen. He thought she was a predictably boring woman, but she probably had something interesting to hide. What pleasure she will bring him, the crown prince thought with a grin about Rachel Roseltine. The count brought a list of dismissed servants who insulted her, and the former butler will also be dealt with personally after interrogation. The man sadly told his daughter that he heard that she returned early from the ball because she was not feeling well. Bowing, he said that he had neglected her too much and asked Rachel to forgive him. Why? Rachel wondered. Was he suddenly expressing so much regret and asking her father not to apologize? But she suddenly asked if he could hug her. The man raised his head and looked at the girl in surprise, and he wondered why he had forgotten the times when Rachel was just an innocent and cheerful child. As he hugged his daughter, tears began to flow from his eyes, and he asked Rachel to forgive him, saying that he was truly sorry. The next morning, they met again in the corridor, and the count asked if she was leaving already. Having handed her a tray of stew, he asked her to eat, as they said it was good for her health, and asked why she was skipping breakfast. Whether she starves herself, Rachel replied that she doesn't have enough time in the mornings, and orders have piled up. She also needed to train new staff and was preparing to open a second bakery. The count worriedly asked where she got so much strength, and Rachel replied that expanding the business was actually a lot of fun. Strike while the iron is hot, Rachel's father said. She could break if she kept going like this. He had saved something for her. Her personal maid said that she could use some new accessories and gave her a bag of money. He said he would pay more attention to her, and Rachel said she left some pasta with the butler and asked him to eat it. At this rate, she would be able to save up money for that auction even faster. Alice met her at the bakery. The boss worriedly asked the girl why she was so early, since it was not yet working hours. But Alice was reassured by this. While brushing her hair, Rachel replied that if she continued like this, she would have to give her a raise. Today, she taught her how to make new bread, talked about Duke Gessen, but Alice understood the situation perfectly. And after Ray needed to drop by Dane's, Alice asked if they were discussing a second bakery and if it would be tiring for her to go back. It's okay, she replied. She needs to make a lot of strawberry muffins tomorrow, so she needs to prepare in advance. But before she could step out the door, Daniel met her. She said that she would have come in herself, but maybe something had happened this time. Rachel asked him what brought him here, as she was planning to go to the top of Danaibi. He replied that last time she arrived in a sloppy carriage, and as his business partner, she would have to travel often. True, she asked, and said that next time he should just send her carriage, since it would be quite problematic to arrive quickly. Surprised, Daniel exclaimed that everything was fine, and they could discuss business on the way. They were both busy, so there wasn't even a chance to be alone. He said this under his breath, which is why Rachel didn't hear him. But anyway, she prepared madeleines for him and happily said they could eat them on the way. Daniel, drooling, thanked the lady, and Rachel remarked that he really liked madeleines. He had previously said that he was going to build a building that could be opened as a second store, and I asked what kind of building it was. He replied that he used to run a shop and that it had a great location. Ray asked if he was giving up such a good location, and then Daniel said that it was because the trade was not going well at all. Rachel began to doubt this place. The guy asked who she entrusted with the design of the interior of the first shop, and Ray answered, the construction company, Roseltane. But for the second branch, she was going to choose someone else, since not long ago the construction business came under Raymond's control. It would probably be a lot of work, and Roseltane would be suitable, but Ray didn't think it was that bad, since she only wanted some minor interior renovations. This building was the result of a project carried out with the current construction company under the direction of Daniel. To be honest, the buns aren't that tasty, Ray said, and the guy replied that he wasn't an expert in that area, but her first shop was at a very high level, and after hearing this, Rachel decided to try starting with painting. But after some time, it turned out that she didn't understand anything about it either, so Daniel suggested entrusting it to a construction company. Clenching her fist, Rachel said that it didn't mean there was no way out. She could have just asked her father directly. The existing workforce was supposed to go to Roseltane, so if she asked her father, it would definitely be more expensive. The money she can spend now is the money her father gives her, the profit from selling sweets. And also the budget was in her name. She hadn't made any profit from the diamonds yet, so there was only one option left. And then Rachel, stretching tiredly, asked what she should do. It seemed she would have to pay Robert a visit soon. Realizing what Rachel was getting at, Daniel said that the money could be borrowed in Daniel's name for personal purposes. Then Rachel excitedly asked if she could borrow 50 million crowns. Of course they will sign the contract, she reassured the guy, and after some time, she will definitely return everything. Then Daniel replied that he could write a check right then and there, and suggested that they decide on the interest rate. He says that we need to roll up our sleeves and start a business conversation. It seemed like we could take off a little. That's what she wanted. But in the end, the interest rate was higher than she expected. Because of this, she asked Martha to buy the cheapest mask, and she bought it in the shape of a hare. But okay, I should have checked at this auction, she thought as she got out of the carriage, when a child's voice called out to her. A little beggar, sitting on his knees, asked a beautiful girl to give him at least a penny. He seemed to be saying this to her, and Rachel reached into her pocket. In the first there was some money, and in the other, there were madeleines. And after thinking for a bit, the girl leaned over, handed the madeleine to the boy, and asked him to eat it. Embarrassed and surprised, the boy asked the girl if these were madeleines from Rachel's bakery. It seemed like it was the one who was following her, and she was afraid that they would steal her. But in the end, the boy thanked her by accepting the madeleine. Rachel asked him to eat it right away, saying that it was delicious, and the boy followed her instructions. Then, leaning over his ear, she said that if he wanted to eat more pastries, he could come to Rachel's bakery. There they say that it is from the White Rabbit, but he must come alone, and then he will be able to eat the buns freely. She did everything she could. If only the children could escape from the house safely and get help, she thought. But then the masked man clicked his tongue and said that helping just one person doesn't make a big difference, and asked what all this was for. Rachel asked him irritably who he was to interfere. Let's see if it was useless or not. And also, he blocks her entrance and asked her not to waste her time and move out of the way. The guy just sighed. What is it? She thought, and hoped that they would not encounter him inside. However, everything turned out to be exactly the opposite. The Springs auction, held only once a year, began and welcomed all participants. To begin with, the auctioneer decided to explain to them the special rules of today's auction. They would be given one sheet of paper and an envelope. They would hand it over once they had written the bet on it, but there was a rule that in order to change the bet, they had to change the sheet. However, they can only change it once, and during the process, they can conduct a conversation. What? Rachel thought with horror. What kind of format is this? Like a competition of wits. The auction began. The item had already been sold for 2,300,000 crowns, and the man presented the next lot. It was a painting by an unknown artist, whose style is striking with the title, The Glitter of Dawn. No imagination in the title. And the painting itself doesn't look anything special, Rachel thought, raising her hand with the number. First of all, she didn't understand paintings, But the other participants, except for the crown prince, weren't strong in this either. When the guy sitting next to her said that this picture was incredible and raised his hand, Rachel thought he was smart. After the time had elapsed, the auctioneer announced that there were 5 people willing to bid and asked them to write down their bids on a piece of paper. The novel stated that the crown prince had written a bid of 50 million crowns and that she had decided to write 10 million to begin with. Suddenly, the guy sitting next to Rachel dropped his piece of paper and then turned it so that the side with the bet was facing her, apologizing. Rachel wondered if he had shown his paper on purpose when the guy asked her how much she valued the painting. She didn't want to create any competition for herself other than the crown prince, so she said she would quote an average rate. After this, the guy grinned, stood up and, taking off his mask, showing everyone his identity, agreed with the rabbit's words. The crown prince asked whether, with the advent of the times, an understanding of means and the ability to understand paintings had recently appeared. When he saw her piece of paper, he knew for sure that it was she, so was the reason that he thought Rachel loved him and therefore would give in. Be that as it may, Rachel thought, and asked her assistant for another piece of paper. The prince looked at the scene with bewilderment. The red-haired young man thought she was interested, but suddenly she became depressed. It was a little pity. Sitting down, he thought that it would be better to prepare just in case, and, raising his hand, asked for another piece of paper. Having written down her bet, Rachel handed over the sheet of paper and, sitting down, asked the prince if he trusted her. "I don't know," the prince answered, stretching out his hand and smiling. From the very beginning, he wanted to set exactly this price. Soon the time was up, and the auctioneer asked everyone to put the envelopes in the box and then evaluate the result. The man announced that he would be announcing from the lowest bidder when Rachel called out to the crown prince. She wondered if it would have been better to write the rate a little higher, since she could have written it higher than him. In any case, he answered without doubting himself. She would not be able to keep up with his bet, so he did not care. The other 2 pieces of paper contained bets that would definitely surprise everyone, the shareholder said. At that moment, the crown prince froze. His eyes widened, and he glanced sideways at his smiling neighbor. Just then, the final bid was announced, and the auctioneer announced that the lot was going for 50 million and 1 crown. And indeed, Rachel told the stunned prince, she had told him to write more. The guy asked what the reason was for giving that painting away for 50 million crowns. Rachel corrected him, voicing the correct rate. "How impudent," he said irritably. And Rachel replied, "It's all because the artist's sincerity can be felt in this painting." The prince's face softened and expressed surprise. In the novel, this painting had a name: Meaninglessness. The crown prince himself named it, but while studying Andre's life, he learned that even when he was not a famous artist, he was in the studio every day. Rachel knew this too, because every day at dawn she went to the bakery. The picture depicted not the sunset, but the rising sun. In a completely empty life, like a secondary character, there is always hope that dawn will illuminate it. In the novel, the crown prince named the painting Emptiness to firmly establish his position as the new sun. Because of this, a conflict arose with the main character, who received the painting as a gift, so she was worried about the course of events. But as someone who also gets up for work at dawn, she can't stand to see the deceased's intentions distorted. Clenching his fists in anger, the prince ordered his servants to immediately set out in pursuit of that rabbit, that is, the gleam of dawn. He showed the piece of paper on purpose and removed the mask. It was just a little entertainment, the prince reasoned. But Rachel's words that the painting depicted not a sunset, but a rising sun, touched him. He grinned and said that things were getting more interesting and that he would probably need to cancel all his plans for today. Rachel hung it up with the second bun and thought that she didn't have the ability to appreciate paintings, so she wouldn't be able to sell it for a high price anytime soon. First, she had to think about how to sell the cake she baked to celebrate the opening. "This is the cake that Queen Victoria liked. Is the name as appropriate as for those rice cakes?" Rachel thought about it and suddenly imagined Sweet Duke Cloud saying he liked strawberries. And having decided to change the name, I called it Raspberry Secret. The bread and Madeleine cookies were also ready. Instead of dealing with the pasta alone, she thought it would be better to take care of the drinks. And so, all the preparations were finished. So the girl decided to rest a little before the opening. When there was a knock on the door and a man asked if she was the bakery owner, Rachel Roseltine, the girl, looked outside. He asked where to put it, and a row of various wreaths, with congratulations, opened up in front of the girl's face. They were from different people, from a business partner and from family, from servants, and even from a VIP client, striking Ray. While she was trying to recover from the shock, the man argued with the owner about where to put everything, and Rachel asked in amazement if there was anything else. Yes, it was the last one, the courier reported. Working as a wreath deliverer, it was the first time he had seen such a huge one. After reading the inscriptions on the ribbons, it immediately became clear that they were from the prince, and Ray wondered if he could report the sender to the police. But judging by the fact that he called her a rabbit, it was the crown prince, and the girl asked to take him to that corner. Why did he care? He should have sold the painting quickly to diminish his interest. But who understood its value? A customer arrived at the bakery, and Rachel greeted him, but soon the guest asked to be dismissed. There was only one Madeleine on the tray, and the boy stuttered and asked if he could have some water. After a while, Rachel came out to the guest and asked if he would try the bread, citing the fact that she wanted to use it for a taste test. There were tables on the second floor, so he could go there and be sure to tell her how he liked it before he left. The girl apologized for saying this so suddenly, but the guy just said that everything was fine and thanked her. After that, the guy went up to the second floor, but less than a minute later, he tumbled down, scaring Rachel. And then he, flushed with inspiration and bewilderment, asked why she was here. Hiding her head under the tray, Rachel asked in surprise what he was talking about and asked him to calm down and explain calmly. There was no time to rest, he cried. Andre's early works had been burned and nothing should remain. So why was such a valuable thing hanging in the bakery? He asked. And suddenly, Rachel asked if he was the artist Andrea, by any chance. The guy, stunned, asked if she knew him. He made ends meet by painting pictures. But thanks to the heroine, he became famous, and even received a surname from the emperor himself for his magnificent works, Master of Landscapes Andrea Bryan. Rachel exclaimed that she was his fan, thinking that there was one person who knew the value of Dawn. At the emperor's palace, the prince was informed that Duke Gissen was spying on Rachel Roseltine. The guy replied that it was very similar to this. He had recently been in the vicinity of Rachel's bakery. Why would Cloud do this? The prince thought. Although it's not hard to guess that His Majesty the Emperor did not approve of the previous duke. And on a winter day, when the demons were especially fierce, he gave the order for a campaign, and the previous duke returned as a cold corpse. And Cloud, who inherited his father's title, resigned himself to his position and chose the path of becoming a lackey of the imperial house. One day, Rachel was hiding in his palace and wanted to deliver a letter so as to prevent a possible threat. Definitely not, the prince suddenly answered himself thoughtfully. The reason cannot be so noble. The servant asked what His Highness was talking about, and the prince, saying that he must ask himself, asked to call Duke Gissen. At this time, in the second shop of Rachel's bakery, Andrea asked in surprise if she was his fan. Yes, she replied. She really wanted to buy the paintings he had done, but he was interested in how she knew about such an unknown artist like him. The girl couldn't say what she learned from the novel. It was time to quickly bewitch him before he began to suspect something. And she explained that she found out about him by chance and thought how cool he was, saying that she would buy his painting at any price. They could have drawn up the contract right then and there, but it was a bit difficult for Andrea because she had run out of paint. So Rachel offered to give him an advance payment, and the guy was very impressed by the fact that she trusted him. Rachel convinced him that she believed in his abilities, thinking that, of course, she believed in the insight of the heroine who realized this. The most important thing at the auction is the price. If Andre becomes famous, Dawn will be valued even higher. And if he draws her pictures, she will hang it instead of Dawn. And he can also come and eat buns whenever he wants. After all, he was the same artist who lit up the second floor of Rachel's bakery. These words touched Andrea painfully, and he said, crying, that he would not forget the mercy and would repay her. When Andre had finished all the bread, Rachel asked him what kind of picture he wanted to paint for her. What he does best, the guy replied, wiping away his tears. He is going to paint a portrait. A portrait? Ray asked. And the guy stood up and confidently said that he would make a sketch right now. How strange, Rachel thought with horror. that in the novel, Alice had been absolutely clear that he had a talent for painting landscapes. In her opinion, he was the best at it, she said this. So it means she didn't know that Andre was better at portraits. It can't be. The most likely reason is that his existence created a crack in the novel. Soon Andre exhaled heavily and announced that everything was ready and asked if she wanted to see. Taking the canvas in her hands, the girl's eyes widened in surprise, and, pressing the portrait to her chest, she thanked him. The girl said that she would keep it. She thought that the landscape would also look beautiful in the bakery. He had an incredible talent for landscapes, too, in her opinion. He was the best at it, Rachel quoted heroine. Hearing this, Andre simply could not believe that she said this, and enthusiastically said that he definitely had to paint a landscape. What happened with the crack in the novel? Before painting the portrait, Andre had to focus on the landscape. After some time, a VIP client came into the bakery and sheepishly said that he had come to look at the buckwheat flowers. Rachel's cheeks flushed slightly at the sight of the guest when Cloud asked when he became a VIP client. And suddenly, changing the subject, Rachel presented him with the cake he had ordered, a raspberry secret, and the Duke's eyes sparkled. While Rachel was busy, Cloud looked around and, with a grimace of horror, wondered why there was such a picture in the bakery. When Cloud called out to Rachel, she was horrified to see that he was looking at the portrait that Andrea had drawn. Then the Duke turned to the lady and, praising her lovely drawing, enthusiastically asked if she had drawn it herself. Well, Rachel thought with worry and nervousness, she hadn't painted it herself, and it wasn't such a pretty portrait. She said that this picture was painted by a guest who came to the bakery, and that she was in the portrait, and thanked him for calling her sweet. The embarrassed Duke modestly thought that he himself hadn't noticed how he had called Rachel sweet, and the girl herself remembered that she hadn't prepared the dishes. She said she would go down briefly to get a fork and plate, but Cloud beat her to it, saying he would get them himself. Rachel was amazed at his speed and wondered if he was using a distance closing technique. That was the Emperor's sword. If she were to open a dessert restaurant later, she would want to hire him as an employee. Then she could focus on baking, Rachel thought, as Cloud suddenly appeared in front of her again. Her movements were so sluggish, the Duke noted, and the girl said that this was the first time anyone had told her such a thing. Suddenly, Rachel asked why he brought 2 sets, and Cloud sheepishly suggested that they eat together. The girl's heart began to beat faster at this proposal. Her cheeks flushed, and she asked, along with her. The reason Cloud became an unpopular male character was because he was rude to the main character, and it was surprising that he could share desserts with her if he loved buns and desserts so much. Whether it was because she baked him a lot of goodies, there was a nice alley here and a lot of customers, Ray said, so it seemed strange to her why trade here had been poor before, especially for rice cakes. But then Cloud said that when she was skipping recently, she looked like a rabbit. Rachel found it hard to believe that she used to be a villain, and now she was being compared to a herbivore. Then Rachel assumed that he also wanted to know who he looked like. But then Cloud turned his head away, blushing. Noticing this, Rachel jumped up from her seat and asked the gentleman if he was feeling unwell, thinking that he had a fever. Rachel walked over to the window and said, "Come to think of it, he must have been riding his horse here for hours." And suddenly, she cried out in horror that he should go quickly, because it was raining outside and the horse would get wet. Having brought the horse under the tent and gotten wet, Rachel sighed with relief, because they had found a place to leave the horse. Rachel, walking into the bakery, wondered if she should continue working on parking lot arrangements. Thanks to Rachel, Cloud quickly learned that it was raining and was thanking her. But then a clap of thunder was heard. A strong wind blew, blowing the door off. But the Duke managed to quickly grab it and close the bakery. Rachel, whose shoulder he squeezed and pressed against from behind, froze for a moment, smelling the fresh scent emanating from Cloud. Pulling back, she said she thought it was a light rain, but it didn't seem to be stopping. There was a room on the second floor, and if he didn't forgive, he could take a little nap until the rain stopped. What? Stuttering and blushing, Duke Giesen asked embarrassedly to sleep, saying that he refused, at the same time talking about something before the wedding. But Rachel said there was a soft chair on the second floor and suggested they go and look, not hearing the Duke's last words. She was offering this to him as a VIP client. Did he really want to refuse when such things were happening outside the window? No, Cloud said. blushing terribly, covering his face with his hand, and thanking her for her work, and that he would definitely reward her. Rachel thought he was sad that he wouldn't have to sleep on a bed. He couldn't even hold his head up, but she couldn't give him a bed, even if he was a VIP customer, and asked him to help clean the kitchen. After cleaning, Cloud took a shower and changed his clothes, before leaving when Rio said she was glad the clothes fit him. Were they Raymond Rosaltine's clothes? Cloud asked. But Rachel said a business partner had left them behind when he came to look at the interior, and she hadn't returned it to him yet. But then the Duke warned her that she should be a little more careful. Rachel didn't understand what she was afraid of, but suddenly she noticed and told Cloud that the rain had already stopped. The guy's eyes widened. "That is, sir." Rachel quickly corrected herself. Without even noticing it, she called him by his name. Cloud said he would be heading back to the capital. The rain had stopped, so there was no need for him to be here anymore. She wanted to ask him to be more careful on the way, but then she discovered that he had already left. As she closed the door, she wondered why he had told her to be careful, as she always paid a lot of attention to safety. But with Cloud, she felt a little calmer. They say that you don't notice a person until he leaves you, and today she felt a little sad. Rachel had recently opened a second bakery thanks to Danev's help, her father reasoned. Daniel was considered Rachel's marriage partner, which was good news. But when did they get so close? Afterwards, the butler reported that there was nothing between them. The lady was very busy. Even the assigned guards said so. At the end of the working day, there are still chores to do: cleaning, menu development, market research, gardening. He would have continued listing, but then the Count stopped him and asked in astonishment if Rachel was doing all this alone. Dvoretsky explained that her bakery even helps an orphanage, and that she recently hired a new employee. And a servant also started working in the bakery as an assistant. She even began to help an unknown artist. And as payment, she took a landscape painting, painted in a special technique. Her father was amazed that his girl knew how to understand people. But, judging by everything, she will not be able to avoid losses, given the price of wheat. The Count almost cried again. If her business failed, she would marry Daniel, as he wanted. But he expected her to change. But then the butler put some papers in front of the Count, saying that he needed to check it urgently. It was a resignation letter. Walking down the street, Rachel approached a forklift and asked if she could ask him something. And she asked, looking at the sparkling building. If it was a bakery, the man answered. As far as she could see, yes. It seemed that, adjusting his beret, he said. She came to look at the owner and told her to come in if she was curious. Clenching her fist, Ray thought that the entrance was much more luxurious than on Wedding Street. Didn't the owner know the trade morality of not opening such an establishment across the street? Besides, it's called Repo Bakery, which is translated from a foreign language as rabbit. But then the Crown Prince met her at the door, saying that he thought she would come right away, but he had to wait. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand in surprise, realizing that this was not an obstacle on Raymond's part, and the prince shouted that he even gave her a hint in the form of a rabbit. But Rachel didn't understand how this was connected with him, and the Crown Prince shouted that he had told her in advance on the wreath. However, its interior did not look like the work of an ordinary company. The prince noticed that she had a keen eye. This was done by the Rosaltine Company. As I thought, Rachel said, clenching her fist in anger. Raymond, this kid has done something again. He's a pain in the ass. Clearing his throat, the prince modestly asked if she was taking good care of his painting, speaking through the glow of dawn. Rachel exclaimed that it was her painting that she won at auction and didn't know why he went so far. The prince liked this painting, and he had never had anything he liked taken away from him, so he would give her as much money as she wanted. Rachel didn't think that he would become so attached, how much he loved the heroine, to give her such a painting, and she thought she would just raise the price. But then he said that, of course, the painting that fell into his hands would be called Emptiness, and goosebumps ran across my skin. Then Rachel irritably objected that she would not sell her to him for anything. The prince advised her to think carefully, but then a familiar voice called the manager and asked where to put this bread. In the girl's hands was bread and pasta, according to her recipe. Martha greeted the lady, saying that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and Rachel, stunned, asked why she was here. It seems, Martha replied, that Alice wrote a letter today and asked if she had read it. So that explains everything, exclaimed the money-hungry girl, "who works here from today?" The prince, having met Marta, asked her if she had worked in the bakery the longest, and if he had ever thought about leaving and helping him. The girl replied that she didn't know. She was quite happy working for the mistress, so she hadn't thought about it yet. But after she was given too much money to refuse, he said he would reward her too, so she figured they both benefited. Rachel turned to Martha and said that His Highness had opened a bakery, so she couldn't leave empty-handed. And coldly asking if she would wrap up some buns for her, she pointed with her finger at the places from which she wanted to take the buns. She needed absolutely everything, and Martha, anxiously moving away from her mistress, ran the next moment, asking her to wait. The prince grinned and pointed his finger at his temple and said that if she didn't want him to take everything away from her, she should think with her little head. What choice should she make? He explained to Mrs. Rachel, which would not give her much time. After a while, Rachel looked at Martha with displeasure, and the maid fearfully asked her mistress not to frown so much. The girl asked to come closer, and Martha thought that she wanted to hit her, but Rachel whispered something to her. Horrified by the news she heard, the girl cringed and, saying that she would pay her, handed over the check she had asked for. The letter stated that Marta had suddenly failed to show up for work and had only left a note saying that she had found a better job. After reading it, Rachel was disappointed to think that it was indeed mentioned in the letter, but she was too busy that day. Daniel arrived and apologized to Rachel, saying that he had heard the news and had assigned a temporary assistant to her at the bakery. He must have been very surprised and thanked her for her help, but it was also her fault, although she didn't know that Martha could do such a thing. Rachel initially built trust with Martha on money, and in this confrontation, she lost to the prince. At first, she thought she shouldn't worry about them stealing the recipe, but they copied the menu completely. After this, the girl invited her partner to try what she bought at that bakery, and Daniel agreed. But after just trying a little, his face grimaced, and he couldn't even believe that these were madeleines. Ray suggested trying the foul-smelling dessert they called a strawberry yogurt macaroon. She tried to eat it, but she was not able to bite off even a piece. If Rachel was biting it, then of course he would try. However, nothing good came out of it, and Ray gave him water. And Daniel said that everything was so bad that they didn't have to worry. Martha was only responsible for minor work, although the imperial chiefs would certainly soon work on correcting the mistakes. However, the bigger problem was that the prince was a brilliant developer of magical artifacts. She realized the moment she walked in that it was fully equipped with various advanced magical devices. And if it becomes known that the place is run by the prince himself, then she will cease to be his competitor. Daniel even seriously suggested to Rachel that she kick the prince out of her domain. But since everything turned out this way, then an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, this means that their plan will go according to plan. After this conversation, at night, Rachel visited Martha's home and said that she had crossed the wrong person. Earlier in the bakery, she had whispered that if she became less useful, she didn't know how the prince would behave. And having said that she would come later, she asked to draw a map and show where she now lives. Martha asked what she meant when she said she didn't know how the prince would behave, and Ray explained that her life could be in danger. Her life, echoed Mrs. Martha. She just wanted to make some extra money once in a while, and Rachel knew perfectly well why Martha was so focused on money, so she couldn't judge. Martha had a younger brother who was terminally ill, and she was earning money for his treatment, which was incredible. But revealing the recipe to others is a big mistake, and Rachel won't forgive her so easily. Then she asked the maid if the prince had said that when he achieved his goal, he would immediately sell the bakery. He said something like that, and then Ray asked, "I wonder how he would deal with people, realizing his mistake." Martha tearfully apologized to the lady. Toga Rachel asked if she would go back to her bakery, and if she admitted her guilt, she would forgive her. The prince was not one to get rid of people left and right, but betrayal was another matter. She was sure that he perceived the money-hungry Marta as a risk factor, so he would definitely want to get rid of her. And then Rachel smiled and said that she would save her, and she would do something for her instead. This is a port area, so there is a high turnover of people here, and it is difficult to attract anyone to the alley. So it was important to make a good impression with high-class design. There was only one way to stand up to such a competitor. And it was a taste among the newly developed products. Brioche bun with cream and fruit. Its fresh taste is perfect for a port city, blown by the sea breeze. It goes perfectly with an Americano or iced tea. Rachel was so focused on her work that she didn't even notice that it was already 11. Lately, the days seemed shorter. She had already tried so many things that she no longer knew if they were tasty. Cloud could probably taste this, Rachel thought, when she suddenly heard the doorbell open. A security guard appeared at the door and informed Ms. Rachel that a customer had arrived and was outside. The girl's eyes sparkled and a blush appeared on her cheeks when the guard announced the name of His Excellency Duke Gisen. Cloud apologized for being so late. He had stopped by Repo's bakery and decided to stop by to see her while he was at it. Ray, who came out to greet her guest, said that everything was fine and that she just wanted to see him. The guy asked in shock if he wanted to see it, and Rachel enthusiastically led him into the bakery and asked him to look at it. There was an automatic door at the entrance, and she also improved the interior, wanting to provide better service to customers. Cloud noted that she had probably used up all her magic, which was true. They had to decide the winner. So the girl asked him how he liked her products, if he compared them with the buns and desserts in the duchy. There was no pastry chef in their mansion, so it was difficult to compare. And then Cloud asked how she had learned the art of baking bread. Ray explained that she didn't study specifically, but read books or experimented on her own, trying to achieve a taste that would please everyone. Now she was thinking about whether she should try even harder. This was not a stone in his garden, after all. He should be working at the Repo bakery. The girl continued to chatter, but finding a moment, Cloud suddenly called out to Rachel, and pressing her against the wall, placing his hand on the wall, Cloud, looking into her eyes, said that she should rest a little. The next moment, the girl squatted down in embarrassment, dodging the Duke and asking him to wait a little, then quickly ran away. While cutting the dessert, Ray thought excitedly about what had happened. Cloud pressed her against the wall, but he probably didn't mean anything like that, that's true. So was he really worried about her health because she was a pastry chef at his favorite bakery? It seemed that way, because Cloud's love for desserts was not defeated even by the heroine of the novel. Rachel couldn't believe that he cared even about the pastry chef. If she hadn't known the novel, she would have understood everything wrong, she thought with relief. The dessert was delicious for Cloud, and Rachel said that it was from the new menu, and she wanted to offer these items to him first. Brioche buns are generally stored frozen at an optimal temperature, and if you do this with fruit, all the moisture will freeze. That's why they're so delicious eaten with brioche, topped with sweet custard. The cold cream and fruit neutralize the brioche's flavor. That's why they don't get tired of him, no matter how much he eats, Rachel said, as Cloud said that she liked that job. Of course, sir, Rachel answered enthusiastically. It was her favorite job in this place. At this point, the Duke thought in surprise as he listened to the girl, wondering if she was talking about the Roseltane family. Then, Cloud suddenly said that she saw a wreath on which Count Roseltane wrote good luck. Ray felt awkward. She said she put it away as soon as she had the space, her father wishing her luck more than anyone. Cloud froze. He had heard about how Rachel was treated in her family, but he couldn't believe that, despite such pressure, she gave love to the things she loved. The dessert was incredible, and he couldn't even imagine how many buns had been baked to achieve such a perfect taste. Watching the Duke, Rachel seemed to be impressed by something other than the brioche. But what did she care? There was something more important. She wanted to ask him for something, and this was something that she definitely wanted to entrust to him. To begin with, she wanted to choose only 2 types of these desserts. The fruits could quickly spoil, and the damage would be great. And to start with, she asked to try brioche with strawberries, then with mango and raspberries. Everything was good. It seemed like a lot, and Cloud asked how many more she had, and Ray listed them, with blueberries, kiwi, melon, green grapes, with plum, pineapple, and also with orange. She also tried to make a mix, but it will be difficult to sell all of this at once. After thinking about the tastes, Cloud said, "First of all, strawberries," and Ray knew that she was biased towards strawberries. He also suggested melon because it was hot, and it was an excellent choice. Melon could help to refresh. She also wanted to choose these 2 fruits, Rachel said, when she noticed Cloud blush, and she asked if he had arrived on a horse, because it seemed like he had a temperature. He turned away embarrassedly and replied that he was in a carriage, and his body temperature is basically high. "That's how it is," Rachel exclaimed and offered to drink water with lemon. Afterwards, she thanked Cloud for his feedback on the new desserts and said that she would give him a stamp as a token of her gratitude, explaining that starting tomorrow, she would launch a coupon system, and when everyone had entered their coupon, he would receive a glass of Americano or iced tea. Duke Gazin praised her system and asked where the coupons themselves were, and Rachel took out a pair of scissors and said that she would do it now. She started making coupons that would be used starting tomorrow, only now, in the middle of the night, Cloud thought in horror. So he immediately tried to stop the girl by asking her what time she thought it was. At 11:30, Ray answered and said that if he waited a little, she would quickly make his coupon and he wouldn't have to wait long. But then Cloud took the paper from her hands and shyly offered to do it together, saying that he liked cutting. Rachel was very happy about this and asked if she could ask him for help, to which Cloud nodded. While Cloud was in the process of creating coupons, he looked at Rachel and suddenly asked if she wanted to take a break sometimes, to which Rachel smiled at him and replied that she didn't want to rest yet. Cloud smiled back at her and said, "Okay." The girl thought that for Cloud, she was probably a slightly strange pastry chef, without whom he couldn't live. However, Cloud is not a supporter of the Crown Prince. In the novel, he followed him only for the sake of the heroine, which means she can trust him. A man came into the Crown Prince's bakery this morning and asked if they had sold out of chocolate bomb macarons. "No, they simply haven't been delivered," Marta answered. "The tiramisu isn't ready, and what was there yesterday isn't." "They didn't make them," Marta answered peacefully, and immediately silence fell between her and the buyer. The man understood her and said goodbye, nervously wondering what kind of service this was. There was also a bakery opposite, and he decided to go there. When the man came out, Martha nervously thought that he looked like a rich man, so she was scared. But the plan was going well. Then, a disgruntled and irritated prince entered the bakery and asked if there were no sales today either. Marta, greeting His Highness, guiltily reported that today was even worse than yesterday. The prince sighed irritably and asked what the problem was if there was a whole line of customers at the bakery opposite. Saying that something needed to be checked, he entered the inner room, and Martha thought that there really was a problem with something. The Royal Palace's confectioners will certainly be able to create new products, chocolate bread, and high-quality desserts. But if you don't tell His Highness, who is so busy with his own affairs, he won't find out. And it's unlikely that he will visit the bakery often. So, Rachel had told her earlier, all she had to do was keep secret which buns were selling best and give poor customer service. She didn't think that the mistress's plan would be so good. Their side was in a much more vulnerable position. One day, the prince asked Martha what a customer who had just left wanted. After all, he didn't leave because they didn't have something. Marta said he was looking for a 2-tiered cream cake, and she said that such a cake could be made to order, and he left. Leaving the bakery, he gave the order to follow the guest who had left and find out why he had left empty-handed. At this time, many people visited Rachel's bakery, and here she was, again welcoming a new customer. The strawberry and melon brioche were ready, and she asked her assistant to display the products, starting with the cream buns. One of the guests was already ready to exchange a coupon for an Americano, but Rachel was completely busy, which meant that only flies were flying around in the Repo bakery. Apparently, Martha is doing a good job with the task. The Crown Prince must be very confused, but he is not a fool either. And so he returned to Marta again, irritably asking why she had not made products for the clients. The girl did not understand what he was talking about. The prince angrily asked how she treated her clients, to which Martha innocently responded with kindness and affection, while the prince slammed the table. "It's a lie!" he shouted angrily. He had just heard people say that his bakery treated customers poorly. Martha was surprised, saying that she was hearing these rumors for the first time and that she worked conscientiously in the Roseltane family. But once the prince discovered the problem, Martha dared to suggest something that made the guy's jaw drop. He ordered her not to talk nonsense. He did not need a worker who was betraying her boss, and shouted that she was fired, calling her by another name. In the kitchen, the cook asked His Highness what he should bake for him tomorrow, so that it wouldn't end up being thrown out. In a place near the sea, fresh fruits will be in greater demand than heavy chocolate. Without proper analysis, even with good service, the bakery would not have stayed afloat for long. and he announced that he was closing down the Repo Bakery, finishing his business, and returning to the capital. This time he was amazed again. Walking through the city, Marta thought that at least this time she would be able to earn a lot of money, but suddenly she was fired. Unlike the prince, who couldn't remember her name until the very end, the lady at least called her Martha. Trust in her was lost, so the mistress would drive her away. So how would she live now, she was worried. First she would have dinner, and then get ready for work, she thought as she entered the house, when suddenly a sound from behind alerted her. Right behind her stood a man, holding a dagger near the girl's throat. Marta dropped the food from the guard. She fell to the floor, unable to stand. The man said that this was punishment for betraying the prince, and Martha, crying and screaming, asked for help. She closed her eyes, but heard some groaning, and then, when nothing happened, she opened her eyes. Sir Sharp appeared in front of her, and after neutralizing the killer, he said that the man was unconscious, and the one he was guarding was looking for her. He brought the girl to Rachel, who worriedly said she couldn't believe the prince had gotten down to business so quickly. She didn't know for sure, so it was good that she sent Sir Sharp and asked Martha if she was okay. Crying from a feeling of guilt before the mistress, the maid said that she was very guilty before her and thanked her. She was guilty and said that she could take away her salary for the next 6 months. Hearing this, Rachel was dumbfounded. She found it hard to believe that Martha, who was focused on money, was asking for a pay cut. It was unbelievable. So Rachel said that she understood, that she realized everything, and asked him to calm down, because she was not going to cut her salary. Why? Martha asked. It was her fault, and Rachel, like a goddess, answered that human labor should be fairly rewarded. And extending her hand to the girl, she offered her to correct her mistake by not betraying her. Crying with happiness, Martha threw herself into Rachel's arms, saying that she was the best mistress and that she would never betray her again. She promised that she would be only her dog. Rachel's plan succeeded. Now Martha was completely hers. The next day, Martha returned to work at Rachel's bakery with a new uniform and renewed energy, politely answered customers' questions about automatic doors and magical maintenance items. While keeping an eye on the girl, Rachel thought that Martha was doing a great job. But now she could think about other things. Another customer entered the bakery. Marta greeted him happily, but suddenly froze, recognizing the man. And the guy himself also recognized Marta, asking if she was the unusually rude worker from the Repo Bakery. Martha instantly recognized the rich customer, but then Rachel asked her if she knew this gentleman. The dark-skinned guy laughed and, putting his hand on his hip, asked if she had originally been an employee of this place. In defense of Martha, Rachel replied that, who knows, she just got back the worker who was taken from her. There was tension, and the guy wanted to ask if she worked as a pastry chef in the royal family's palace. I haven't worked, Rachel replied. And then the guy asked how she would feel about becoming his personal pastry chef. Ray froze in amazement, and he said that the melon brioche at this place was simply amazing. He tried them for the first time yesterday, but he couldn't forget them. Handing over his business card, he introduced himself as the second prince of Hercules, Kevin, and asked that she not need anything and contact him at any time. Rachel couldn't even imagine that she would meet the second prince here, and Martha replied that she could, because the port of Genève is the largest. That's why even the second prince shops here, especially since it's the academic holidays now. Suddenly, she enthusiastically asked if it was true that the Sea of Hercules glowed emerald, and if he went, would he take her with him? In response, Rachel asked Martha, laughing, if that was why she was so bad at combing her hair. She saw it all and asked to give him the comb so she could comb her hair herself. But Marta kept asking him to promise to take it with her. Sitting in his chambers, the second Prince Kevin ate melon brioche and thought that he needed to get everything before returning. And with a smile and tenderly looking at the new piece of dessert, he said, I hope Juliana will like it too. At night, Rachel asked Martha not to read novels, but to get a good night's sleep. But an interesting novel made her healthier even without sleep. Besides, Martha told the lady she hadn't seen her smile like that for a long time. She looked sweet and carefree, as expected at her age, but before she had a creepy smile. Rachel, irritated by the parody, asked what she was talking about and told him to stop collecting nonsense and go and rest. Left alone, Ray thought that the second prince had said that he would visit this place in 2 days, before his departure. She needed to get some sleep and think about tomorrow, so she went to bed. But the voices outside the door did not stop. Martha said no, told about the second prince's proposal, and then knocked on the door, causing Ray to wake up. Martha apologized to the lady for waking her, and, somewhat surprised, reported that Mr. Deneve had arrived. Having launched it, a sleepy Rachel asked if he had really arrived here immediately after reading her letter. She was going to tell him everything when she went to the capital, but Daniel replied that he had come here on other business and had picked up the letter a little earlier. And he immediately rushed to her, but after thinking, he realized that it was quite late now. Ray said nothing. She was always glad to meet a friend. Then Daniel worriedly reported that he had previously heard from a servant that she had received an offer to be a pastry chef. Rachel replied that she hadn't decided anything yet, but she was already thinking about going abroad one day. And then he said that he wanted to hire her first. That idiot, the second prince, he would pay more than him. And then they will get a place in the diamond industry. Then there will be many opportunities to get into the Aber Empire. So he plaintively asked Mrs. Rachel not to leave them. The girl guiltily said that there were many bakeries in the area. And she asked shyly if he really liked her baking so much, and Daniel answered worriedly that this was one of the reasons. Besides, receiving such great help from him, she must give something in return, she said with a yawn. She apologized, saying that she wanted to sleep much more than she thought, and meant that she just couldn't accept it. Daniel chuckled and agreed with her, when suddenly he heard a cough and looked up in surprise. Rachel sat in front of him, her head bowed, all red and sweating, not responding to his calling her. After a while, the girl woke up in a cold sweat, and with a compress on her forehead, Martha noticed that the lady had come to her senses. Ray seemed to pass out briefly and asked where Daniel was, but Martha reported that she had slept all day. The doctor came in and said that she needed a week of rest. It wasn't just a cold, but she was very tired and lacking sleep. My God, she couldn't even take care of herself without her. Marta was indignant. She probably just didn't show it yesterday, even though it was bad. To be honest, she was even worse off without her, because she went over to the prince's side. This worried Martha. She was willing to give her ashes as an apology, but Rachel insisted that she just do her job. Marta expressed a desire to change the wet towel, and she gave her a letter written by Daniel to read. He asked her to rest well and not to overexert herself, wishing her a speedy recovery, and he asked her to contact him if she wanted to leave the empire. Rachel thought about when he told her not to leave, but then Marta reported that as soon as she passed out, Daneve put her on the bed and kept changing her wet towel. Looking back at the letter, Rachel asked again if Daniel had taken care of her when she was unconscious. He seemed very worried that he wouldn't be able to eat the madeleines if she got sick, and her baking was clearly quite charming. But, according to the novel, when Juliana returns from studying abroad, she will open several businesses, and she'll inevitably run into the Rosaltine family, and when that happens, she'll be a real villain, so maybe she should just go to Hercules instead. The place where the centralized government system collapsed, the royal family took on symbolic significance. The country is freer than an empire. The proposed sum is enormous, and he will help her settle in her new place. This was a great opportunity to earn money without your own business. And then she asked Martha where the rest of the letters were. In response, the maid winked and enthusiastically replied that it was all hers, because she needed to establish connections. And by the way, Martha remembered, Alice was embarrassed to write this in a letter, so she asked me to tell her something, to convey that she is her role model, and Martha added that, for her, she is the best. Having said all these sweet words, Martha threw a wet towel on her forehead, and Rachel, exclaiming in surprise, asked if she needed to wring it out yet. After the jokes, Martha left her mistress in bed, and when leaving, asked her to sleep well, gaining strength. This empire was full of what it had built, and what it would build in the future, and the things dear to it needed to be protected. Kevin walked lightly towards the golden-haired lady, who asked how his deal had gone. Excellent, the prince answered his beautiful Princess Juliana, but the girl shyly asked not to call her princess. The guy provided her with copies of the invoice, but did not know whether there was any benefit to such an investment in the Dane Trading Group. But the potential for growth was limitless, Juliana said with a smile, and thanked him for this time. No need to thank her. Kevin replied, asking her to try it, explaining that she was also interested in the baking business. So he offered the owner of this bakery to become a pastry chef, but she refused, and the bakery is called Rachel's Bakery. Kevin treated Juliana to a melon brioche, and she was amazed by the taste, but wondered why she refused. The girl knew that he would not offer her unfavorable conditions, but Kakeen did not know what the matter was. And then he told her what Rachel had said, that the bakery was too dear to her, so she couldn't leave it. Juliana understood the girl, but she still interested her, and later she definitely wanted to meet her. At the same time, in the capital of the empire, near the main bakery, Rachel and Martha were met by a little boy. Bowing to the lady, he enthusiastically introduced himself as Jake and said that he wanted to work in this place. It was sudden. Rachel remembered him because she saw him in front of the auction building, and thanks to her, Jack was able to show courage. He modestly said that he always thought that leaving his friends and running away was difficult, so he was worried a lot. Everyone was younger than him, but soon, when he arrived at the bakery, he was kindly greeted by Alice, who knew about him from the mistress. I was able to talk to the Duke about the futility of the application to the security detachment and resolve this. Thanks to the help of Alice Nuna and Duke Geeson, everyone in the orphanage was now living well, and it was all thanks to her. The boy enthusiastically said that she was the best bakery owner, and he wanted to repay her by working for her. But he was too young, according to imperial law. Children of his age could only be allowed to work at home farming. "No way!" he asked, almost crying. Did he really want to try? Ray didn't want to see such eyes, immediately remembering her younger brother. And finally, having succumbed to his charm, the girl offered to bake some hot bread first, but she would do it all alone. "Oh God," the lady suddenly said, and Rachel turned around and immediately recognized Katerina, and she said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and she missed her. She heard the news that she opened a new bakery in Daneve's domain, and that's why she looks tired. But then, looking over Ray's shoulder, she angrily asked Jack when he managed to escape and ordered him not to bother Rachel. Ray realized that he had slipped away secretly and said that she was glad to see her after such a long time and promised to run to the shelter. Katerina didn't mind her looking at the kids she'd saved. They were all doing well, but Ray hadn't done anything special. On the contrary, she heard that a lot of help was coming from the Duke and Alice, and it was true, they fought for a very long time to prevent Cloud from taking the child. If Jack goes with him, he will learn the art of me, but he wants to bake bread. But then Ray asked Katrina if she was friends with the Duke. "What?" she asked in amazement, and Rachel explained that she thought she sounded like they were very close. Katerina coughed and said that this couldn't be, and Rachel, worriedly asking if everything was okay, said that she would bring some water. "It's nothing special," she said, grabbing Jack. She remembered one urgent matter, so they need to go quickly. Saying goodbye and waiting for the next meeting, Katerina ran away, and Rachel wondered if she hadn't come to buy something. The boy wanted to learn how to bake bread, but they couldn't trust the recipe to just anyone, Marta said. But Rachel noticed that she herself still didn't know him, as long as she only stood behind the counter and ran small errands. It was true, so Martha pursed her lips in offense, not protesting, and Rachel suggested they quietly return. Already at home, little Isabel ran crying into her sister's arms, saying that she missed her very, very much, and Rachel also missed her very much. But looking around, she asked if it was anyone's birthday today. The sister replied that no, and then the Count came out to meet his daughter, and Rachel asked her father in surprise why there was so much jewelry. The Count, wearing a festive cap, like all the servants, unfurled a poster, and modestly but solemnly congratulated Rachel on her return. After this, the servants launched festive firecrackers with confetti, and the sister put a cap on her head. Only Rachel was surprised by this. The crown prince was walking through the royal castle, when suddenly his younger brother called out to him and greeted him. "Hello," his brother answered. And this made the boy nervous, because before he would have said, "Hello, Reuben," and asked how things were. So the kid decided to ask the elder if something had happened on the lands of Daneve. The prince shuddered. And after that, he answered Reuben briefly and dryly, telling him to leave. Reuben told his brother to rest, and then asked the nanny why he was in such a mood. The nanny asked the prince not to use the word filthy that he had just used, but Robin had heard his brother use it often. The lady thought that it would be better to explain everything to the prince herself than for him to accidentally hear it somewhere, and said that she had heard a rumor. There was talk that the count had a daughter named Rachel, and she had recently been nicknamed the Witch Confectioner. They said that she won with buns, and this really shocked Robin that the witch had carried out a bun attack on his brother. "It was something like that," the nanny answered, "and he should also eat fewer buns, for fear that he would get cavities." And the kid couldn't believe that his cool brother had gotten terrible buns and decided that he wouldn't forgive this witch. At Rosaltine's house, her father said that he had ordered a lot of delicious food to be prepared and called his daughter to come and have dinner. He said Samuel had suggested holding such a meeting to celebrate her return for the first time in a long time. Then, a voice was heard behind them, asking if Samuel had written a letter with such a proposal. But that is not so important. Raymond said with disgust that he did not understand how his father had given the go-ahead for this and ordered him not to wait for the table. The father wanted to dissuade his son, but it was good for Rachel, because if she had dinner with him, she would have had indigestion. Thinking about what to say, Rachel suddenly turned affectionately to her brother Raymond, calling him Mond. But the next moment, they both felt like they were on pins and needles. Mond had goosebumps from the address, and Ray had let the phrase slip out by accident. But suddenly, Rachel, moving away, asked him if he knew about Repo's bakery, and Raymond winced with concern. She heard that he carried out construction work after receiving an order from His Highness the Crown Prince. Father was surprised. He asked why their family would build someone else's bakery, Raymond, without his knowledge. But then Rachel told her father that everything was fine. He himself knew what ultimately happened to this bakery. The guy pursed his lips, and Rachel suggested that they go eat quickly, when Isabel asked what her sister was holding in her hands. And opening the box, Rachel replied that these were products for the second bakery. She ran there and made a few at the same time. The count was amazed at his daughter's skills. She was probably tired and shouldn't have rushed. But Rachel said she wanted to have a bite to eat together. Isabel suggested food and dessert, saying that her little sister was the best. She exclaimed, "It felt strange, like she was coming home for real." But that couldn't be right, Rachel thought. After all, she was an adopted daughter, and they would protect her less. After some time, having signed a contract, Marta finally received an official position in the kitchen, promising to continue to be a faithful dog. Surprised, Ray asked Martha to calm down. In any case, she would be baking the bulk of the buns, and she would only be helping. While giving her instructions, Rachel told her about the placement of ingredients and decorations, saying that she would remember everything as she went along. "The flour is in the pantry, but the knights locked something there, and Ray spoke mockingly and advised not to go there." Martha was scared. And then they decided to start making new buns. They needed to bake something fresh just in time for the summer. And these are shoe buns. The main ingredients are flour, eggs, butter, and also baking powder and powdered sugar. While kneading the dough, Rachel's hand began to hurt, and then Martha asked why she didn't have an automatic beater. Ray replied that the costs of developing magical tools were enormous, and then Martha wished the lady to become richer quickly. Continuing to watch Rachel's actions, Martha could already smell a delicious aroma, and soon the sweet and soft custard was ready. Martha had already tasted it and declared it delicious. After asking if she could make it herself, Rachel said she would be there. At this time, little Prince Robin reached the place where the witch who frightened his brother lived. The kid told the guard that only he was going with him and told him not to even think of calling him a prince. When the guard asked what he should be called then, Robin enthusiastically said that his name was Ben, and he was his father. They would hide their identities during the inspection, his brother said. Robin ran to the lawn, but suddenly froze. And then he exclaimed, "The weeds are in the way," ordering them to be cut quickly and clear the way. The guards thought, but they had to hide their identities. The whipped cream was refreshing, very pleasant to eat on a hot day, and Jack really liked the taste. Marta said that their mistress was the best, and the boy said that his little sister had golden hands and did not regret coming to visit. "Little sister?" Martha asked discontentedly, and Jay corrected himself to the hostess, who was already about to act like an elder with him. Suddenly, the three heard strange sounds outside, and Rachel decided to check what was going on. And then a very strange and astonishing scene opened up before them, in which men were mowing grass with daggers. Watching them from the window, Rachel wondered why strangers were pulling weeds near their bakery. Martha hoped they weren't going to charge them. Jack was complimenting them, and Rachel was thinking of bringing them something refreshing. But then, among the sounds of mowing grass, a child's voice was suddenly heard ordering the witch to come out. The girl came out and greeted the boy at Rachel's bakery, wondering why the customer had suddenly come. The guard excitedly reported that they saw a sign saying that she had a day off, and Ray confirmed that they were not working today. But since they had come here on such a hot day, she asked if they would like to try some new products. As little Prince Robin exclaimed, "No way! The witch could have set up some dirty trick!" He explained, pointing his finger at the hostess, that he had heard rumors and had come himself to reveal her essence. After the death of the ancient dragon who shared his power, true magic completely disappeared from this world. Of course, until now, there were a small number of people who could still use magic. Witches. Those who killed the dragon in order to take the magic for themselves were later punished and all exterminated. Instead, there are magic crystals that collect mana from the air, and magical devices that help use them. Thanks to them, one can use magic. But Robin could not believe that witches appeared again. This was unforgivable. Rachel praised the boy's knowledge of lore and said he was smart, and also that she was not a witch. Although others really do call her that, Robin still didn't believe it and had to see for himself. Then Rachel asked him to wait a little so she could show him what magic tricks she had used. Having invited the prince and the guard to the bakery, she showed how she baked custard buns, which amazed Robin. It really could have easily been confused with magic. And then the guard expressed his desire to try it first for safety's sake. However, as soon as he tasted the choux pastry, he melted under the divine taste. It was like a snow-white sweet grace, but the boy became curious if it was as tasty. And when I took a bite, it started to shine. The taste was so wonderful that it was even difficult to describe. Incredibly delicious. The boy bought a box of buns and left the money. But Rachel said that it was a new product, and there really were a lot of them. So she gives them a box of buns for pulling out the weeds and suggests that next time they bring their older brother along. And then she would treat them to delicious buns again. The boy, enchanted and charmed by Rachel, modestly agreed. On the way home, Robin joyfully exclaimed that it was not magic, and the buns were simply very tasty, and the knight was happy about it. Martha guessed that they were all knights guarding the little buyer. The royal child. Not everyone his age would know so much about the history of magic, and at this rate, they could get another VIP client. Rachel didn't even know. At least those around him would stop calling her a witch, although that was impossible. Jack knew she was popular, even with the little ones, and said his older brother would love her buns too. Martha said that she had brilliantly made him bring his brother with him, and even paid for the weeding. This praise slightly embarrassed Rachel, and she laughingly asked what they were doing, suggesting that they go out to eat. At the meeting with Daniel, he said that when preparations for export were completed, he would tell about the diamond mine. Looking through the papers, Rachel wondered if they could keep this from the Crown Prince's eyes until then. "It would be difficult to hide everything completely," Daniel replied. "It would be more convenient if they were not on hostile terms." He heard that she was not going to sell the painting to the Crown Prince under any circumstances, and Ray proudly confirmed this. If that was the case, how long did she plan to keep Dawn? He asked Rachel, and the girl answered smiling, talking about this until the person who needed her appeared. Seeing one choux pastry in the box, the Crown Prince asked Robin where he got it from. The boy guiltily and modestly informed his brother that it was very tasty, so he wanted to share it with him. His brother asked him not to eat any food outside the castle. He couldn't afford to get sick after eating something untested. Hugging the older boy, he happily agreed, but said that he first let the guard try it and asked him not to worry. When asked where he bought it, Robin replied that it was in Lilfrost and that he wanted to go there with him when he had time. The owner promised to treat him. Of course, the brother agreed with Robin. He could devote time to him, but he himself thought warily, Lilfrost again. Rachel thought that the Crown Prince was probably furious right now. He was not the type to play by the rules. If she moves forward confidently, he will no longer lay claim to the painting, and who she will give it to will be known later. But she still had things to do, and when she was about to go, Daniel jumped up and said that it was dangerous to go at night. He wanted to walk Rachel home, but she said he was busy too. She had taken security with her, so everything would be fine. Then he anxiously suggested taking a jacket, because the temperature drops sharply at night. But Ray didn't like warmth, so everything was fine. And then, changing direction, Daniel said that he would give her an ice pack, a magical item that had spread throughout the Danev Guild. He put it to his cheek and offered to exchange it for something. It was really cold, and then Rachel said that she would give him a can of lemonade. When asked if this was part of the new menu, Ray replied that the only VIP customer had asked for fruit drinks to be added to the new menu. She happily reported that such a person had finally appeared, and he was still in the gold category, but he could catch up if he tried. But she didn't share her customer's personal information, and then Daniel asked if she would add something he wanted to the menu if he became a VIP customer. Of course, Rachel answered happily. Although she does not fulfill the requests of all VIPs, he is her dear business partner and friend, so she asked him to think about what he wanted in advance. Daniel was looking forward to it, but asked him not to bother himself for his sake. After a while, the guy reported that they had done so that the wheat did not decrease, without Mrs. Rachel's knowledge, and she did not suspect anything. "That can't be," Daniel said. "She has good intuition in management and thinks quickly, so she probably already took everything into account." He ordered that the registration book be found and either destroyed or burned. This must be dealt with in a way that does not interfere with the work. After that, he didn't let the guy go, tapped his fingers on the table, causing tension, and then asked who the bakery's VIP client was. The guy cautiously reported that it was Duke Cloud Gessen. The tapping on the table stopped instantly, and Daniel asked if it was true. The guy replied that when the lady was in the first branch, he did not make separate orders for reservations, and when she was in the second, he did not show up. So he followed her into the second bakery and asked if he himself had seen them talking. The guy replied, "No. Mostly Mistress Rachel talks to the Duke indoors. Daniel has been with her from the very beginning of the business, and as soon as something happens, he immediately runs to help and thought that only he helps her." But suddenly, she said that although she does not fulfill the requests of all VIPs, he is her dear business partner and friend. And these words directly meant that that VIP buyer was also special to Rachel. He thought with alarm. They are more intimate than him, her dear business partner and friend, and that someone is the Duke of Gessen. Isn't he the type who has no interest in baking at all? It's obvious that he wasn't acting as the Crown Prince's confidant, but rather using the orders as an excuse to seduce Rachel. At this time, Rachel was thinking that today, she needed to sterilize the jars that they would use for the compote. But then Martha came running to her with a worried cry and told the lady that these strawberries looked too tasty. Martha was allowed to eat a few berries, and then the guard asked her to try some too, and Rachel allowed it again. For some reason, she suddenly wanted to go play with toy dishes, looking at these children, and she missed Isabel. Then the loud talking hand came and announced that the account book had arrived, recording the amount of flour remaining. The girl thanked him and asked if he would try the freshly washed strawberries she had, but the guy refused her offer, saying that he was fine, and ran off to continue working, leaving Rachel behind. But Hans simply did not know how to lie, and he always behaved like that every day when he brought a fake expense book. Rachel had long ago noticed that the expense book had been falsified, because despite the careful work, traces of falsification remained. However, she didn't know why this was being done, so she pretended not to notice. If it were something ordinary, they would have discussed it with her. Daniel, who replenishes his flour supplies when he needs to sell it quickly. The Crown Prince, who even opened a new bakery because of a quarrel with her. She thought she knew the characters in the novel better than anyone else, but now she couldn't even imagine. Today, Cloud was supposed to come for new products, who became the Crown Prince's dog only because of Juliana. On the other hand, this meant that their relationship would also cool down as soon as Juliana appeared. She thought, blushing. The preparation for the release of Strawberry Latte was complete. The method of preparation was easy. To make the drink, all you had to do was cut the strawberries nicely, add them to the bottle with sugar and stir. The girl told her workers that she wanted to separate the ingredients and asked them which they thought was fresher. However, as usual, they were of no help. The guard liked everything, and Marta knew nothing. And Rachel laughingly said that she would do everything herself, thinking that at least she had done all the work, and she was not bored. Tiramisu and strawberry latte will be on the menu soon, so that should be enough. But before then, she planned to bake a substantial batch of mint chocolate chip cookies. She wanted to tell Cloud everything as soon as possible and asked if they were really going to be with her until the end of the workday. She said that a VIP customer would be arriving soon and asked if it would be awkward for them. Marta said that she could pack the buns at that time, and the guy said that he would be her security, so he would wait until she left work, and then the door opened. Rachel peered around the corner happily to greet Cloud, but then froze in amazement. In front of her, at the entrance, stood a completely wet Duke of Gessen, and Rachel asked why he was in such a state. Cloud replied that it was because it was raining. Rachel said that he had an umbrella, but then froze, looking at his outstretched hand. Cloud said he wanted to give them to her before they all disappeared, but he couldn't find any more. The couple behind him were just as surprised as Rachel. The guard asked warily when the flowers had managed to bloom, but then Martha quickly slapped him across the face, shutting his mouth. After that, she quickly brought Cloud a towel, and, picking the knight up on her shoulders, said that they were leaving. The Duke and Rachel were left alone. Time passed, and then he apologized if she didn't like it. But Rachel modestly said that she liked them. She had to take into account the tastes of the customers, so usually it was she who was worried about other people's preferences. But there were no people who were interested in what she liked, and Rachel asked if he knew that she liked these flowers. And the Duke explained that he had learned it when they had assigned their secret word, because usually in such a situation, people come up with what they love. Rachel was fascinated and confused by his speeches. He began to know so much about her favorite things. Cloud said, with concern and embarrassment, that it just happened that way, and now he would know about them because they had similar tastes. He liked the desserts she made. Was that the only reason he was acting so sweet? Rachel thought, blushing. Then Rachel, with a careless movement of her hand, touched the glass, and Cloud noticed this and grabbed it. However, it turned out that while grabbing the glass, he hugged Rachel, and now they were very close to each other, looking into each other's eyes. Blushing, they both pulled away from each other in embarrassment, and Cloud changed the subject to strawberry lattes. Still unsettled by the situation, Rachel nervously replied sweetly that it was made with strawberry compote, a new item on the menu. She tried to adjust the taste. After all, it was a gift for a special customer. Cloud's cheeks flushed again. He looked away and thanked her shyly, but Ray thought it was a reaction to the strawberries, and Cloud really liked her desserts. After some time, Rachel also visited the Roseltine mansion, treating Isabel to a strawberry latte. The father was also able to enjoy its taste and thanked Rachel. The girl said that she also left a few more bottles. Touched and proud of his daughter's achievements, the Count smiled and asked why. Knowing the ethics of trade, he still accepted gifts for free. And he said that he would pay her back for this strawberry compote and asked her to tell Samuel the amount she wanted to receive. Rachel was surprised by her father's desire to express gratitude, and she was even at a loss for a moment. When they met, Samuel said that he had listened to the Count, and he had told him to pay the amount she would name. She was much earlier than he expected, but she should stop worrying about it, and Rachel said she wanted the right to 7th Lilfrost Street. Samuel almost fell out of his chair from such a request, and loudly asked if she was asking too much for the strawberry compote. Rachel knew it herself, but her father had never discussed the price of the buns in her bakery. This was a first, so she took this proposal as meaning that her father finally wants to support her business. In fact, even if this is not the case, she does not care. Count Roseltine's words carry great weight. Her father had probably calculated everything and wanted her to name the price she wanted. It was time to show everyone what kind of plans she had, and said that it would be an investment they would not regret. Samuel was surprised, but then he started talking about opening a second bakery and asked why she didn't accept the family's help. Rachel said that it was all because of her brother Raymond, who was responsible for the Roseltine business, and he would not agree to help her with a penny. And if her father found out about this, he would order her to be helped. That was what it meant to accept help from her father. And it's better for her to do everything on her own, because she wants to show that she has grown to such a level. Samuel then asked worriedly if she was targeting Roseltine's business, but Rachel replied that she wanted Roseltine's transport. After a short silence, the guy replied that he understood her, and that he would not reveal the details of their conversation to the Count. This surprised Rachel, but a smile appeared on her face, because it meant that he would help her so that she could take over the Rosaltine transport. She will open bakeries throughout the empire, organize the export of recipes and magical items, and that will be the first step in her plan. Little by little, the renovation of the bakery she managed was being completed, and it became so nice and clean inside. Everything was starting to improve, and today was calm. She thought happily as she prepared the brioche. Suddenly, a loud cry was heard calling the manager to come out, the voice of the boy who came last time. The knight advised the lady to go out, and Martha volunteered to go and watch, while Rachel was busy preparing. But a moment later, Martha returned, trembling and sweating, and worriedly told her mistress that she should go out. After asking her to replace her, Rachel walked out, wondering why she was so scared, when she suddenly froze herself. Suddenly, she saw His Highness the Crown Prince standing in front of her in the bakery, smiling at her. He said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and Rachel bowed worriedly, saying hello and asking what business he was there for. Just then, the prince leaned down and pulled out Robin, who was invisible from behind the counter, and joyfully exclaimed that he had brought his brother himself. Yes, the Crown Prince confirmed with a nod. This is Reuben de Theon, his only younger brother. Rachel was surprised that the boy turned out to be the Crown Prince's brother, and Robin excitedly asked if she had prepared any treats. The girl said that she would go and prepare everything, and asked if they would like to look at the buns that they wanted to try. Robin said he was buying everything that was there. Rachel thought sadly that this was good news during the crisis. But now the bakery was thriving, so customers who buy buns will leave empty-handed, and if this happens again, they will stop coming here. She could agree to this once, but if they came again? But then Erwin asked who would eat all this. His little brother replied that he wanted to try everything with him, but then decided to choose what he wanted to try. Wow, Rachel thought and whispered. It looks like he wants to be serious in front of his older brother. The girl asked the little prince if he liked milk. Erwin said that he had no allergy. He tried the buns, so she knew Erwin agreed, and said that he fell in love with these buns so much that he even brought him some. Watching Rachel, the prince said that usually adopted daughters from noble families work for the royal family. And then Erwin asked Rachel Rosaltine if he would like to become a pastry chef under Robin. He said that she would not need money. It would give her much more than she could earn here, and it was a very nice offer. But Rachel was forced to refuse because she was happy with her life. Her main goal was to succeed and sell her bread everywhere, no matter how much the royal confectioner was paid. He promised 100 million crowns a month. Erwin didn't like to bargain, and this time he would take into account how much she wanted to receive. After counting all of the prince's purchases, Rachel informed Erwin that he had paid for everything in full. In the end, Robin bought everything anyway. The boy modestly said that he wanted to try everything that he hadn't tried and brought it for him. Marta called them to come, also saying that she would repack all the buns for him so that they would not be damaged. Carrying his brother away in his arms, Erwin said that there were still things that needed to be sorted out and that he would not wait long. Wary, Martha said how strange it was to watch the Crown Prince, who wanted to kill her, show love to his brother. Rachel told the maid that they were closing for the day, but Martha said there were still some rolls left in the kitchen, to which the girl guiltily replied that they would only finish them and she would take them to the shelter. Rachel and Katerina met like old friends, and the lady noticed that she looked unwell. The director asked Rachel not to work too hard and to rest, and said that if she gave herself time, no one would say anything. Rachel said that she came specifically for her to say these words to her, and then Katerina asked her to come empty-handed. Otherwise, it seemed like a deal, and Rachel replied that she was simply expressing her feelings through buns. Usually, she was told this often, and if she was so worried, then maybe she would help her with advice when needed. The former Duchess said that it was finally her turn to help, and after thanking her, Rachel asked for something. She told the director that she had received another offer from the Crown Prince and wanted to refuse. She had people to be responsible for and a job to do, and Rosaltine still maintains a neutral stance. But still, the conditions were too good, so she couldn't make up her mind. But Katerina quietly said that she didn't like the Crown Prince. She happily offered to not transfer to them completely, but to conclude an additional contract with the royal family. Her Majesty the Empress also loved her entire series of rice cakes, and indeed, Ray recently entered into a direct contract with the Empress. This will work if she hires new employees. Of course, Katerina will always root for her, no matter what choice she makes. Rachel happily thanked Katerina. The biggest problem was that she was showing weakness. The prince could persuade her to sign the contract. She felt this when she lent money to Daniel, but she is not sure that she will be able to successfully sign a contract that is beneficial to her. Katerina didn't help Ray much, but Ray felt much better after sharing her worries with Katerina. She was thinking about the possibility of signing a contract under her leadership when she suddenly heard a childish argument. Running to help, she asked what happened. The boy pointed at another and shouted that he said he would take away his croissant. Another one yelled at him in response, and then Rachel decided to calm down first and discuss everything calmly. "It's too late," the culprit said, crying. "He dropped it." The other boy shouted that he pushed him and stepped on the croissant. Inspired by the conversation and argument, Rachel exclaimed to Katerina that it was really good that she came here. Therefore, the girl sat down in front of the guys and turned to them and said that next time she would bring more delicious buns. "But there are no croissants at Rachel's bakery," the boy said sadly. And Ray smiled and said, "Not now, but they will be there soon." A few days later, Rachel, with Martha's help, had all the preparations completed in the morning. There were only some things that Martha had not finished, and then she asked the lady to trust her to complete them. Rachel asked them to have a good dinner and then come on the cart she would send. Martha happily said that the lady was the best and cared about her employees, and that she was definitely going to win. Afterwards, Martha asked George. He said that he would leave work a little earlier today. That was true. But until then, he pledged to work hard, and, so that the manager would not bother herself, she would start by packing the goods. Today was finally the day of the meeting regarding the signing of the contract. The Crown Prince, the genius magician, and the representative of the association. If that's the case, then he could make a piece of candy out of the waffle iron blueprint. Just as in her past life, her last task was to export the waffle iron blueprint. She knew everything well, from the scheme to the strategic sale, which would make it possible to conclude a more interesting contract. Then it would happen on conditions, and the next new product in Rachel's bakery would be croffle. Alone in the bakery, Martha poured herself a strawberry latte and thought that she hadn't been enjoying it lately. And tearing herself away from the glass, she indignantly screamed, asking why more and more people were fawning over the mistress. The title of favorite belonged to her. To be next to the mistress, one must be at least the best knight of the empire. But then the best knight in the empire appears in the bakery, and Martha greets the master with unusual joy. The Duke found out that Rachel had an important meeting today, so she left work early. Martha said that the Crown Prince offered her to become the prince's personal pastry chef, and the Duke shuddered. Cloud said that it would be better for her not to reveal her mistress's plans to everyone, but the girl objected that he did not tell everyone. Previously, she also received an offer from the Crown Prince and worked for him, but when he no longer needed her, he was going to kill her. It couldn't be that the same thing happened to the lady, but she was worried. He was close to her and the prince, and she thought that he already knew. Cloud thought in horror that while there was certainly a huge difference between a servant and the Rosaltine family, a chess knight could become anyone. Moreover, the Crown Prince has always had a negative attitude towards the Rosaltine family. Although he owned half of the empire's businesses, he left politics, declaring neutrality. This neutrality was what allowed the Rosaltine family to stay afloat. If Rachel became subordinate in such a situation, her fame would fall. Sighing, Martha said that the lady checks everything carefully, although she doesn't know what exactly. This means that now not everyone can buy her dessert. Well, suddenly, she raised her head in surprise, as if she had come to her senses. Maybe she shouldn't have talked about the strawberries. But at that very moment, Duke Cloud Gessen decided to act to protect his interests. He harnessed his horse. Having seen the guest off, Martha thought with a grin, "Receive the guest, Crown Prince. How dare he entice the lady with 100 million crowns?" At the same time, Rachel Rosaltine arrived to meet with His Highness the Crown Prince. She apologized to His Highness because she thought she wouldn't be late. But Erwin said that she wasn't late and there was still time. She didn't think that the meticulous prince would come early and say what he thought, thus showing his desire to meet. Sitting down, Rachel said that she would not hesitate and give him her answer about having to refuse his offer. It was an excellent offer, but there were circumstances she couldn't avoid, and Erwin asked what they were. But since it was a personal question, asking if she was thinking of selling the recipes, in any case, other people won't be able to do the same as she did, Ray replied. With incredible self-confidence, she said that in exchange, she would make Prince Robin a VIP customer of her bakery. And she explained to the heir that there was a narrow circle of customers with special service. Not everyone could become one, and that bonuses were provided here. VIP customers were selected based on the number of total visits and the number of strawberry menu purchases. The prince read. He asked if the conditions were realistic and said it was difficult to achieve, but possible if you loved the bakery or her immensely. Rachel shuddered. For some reason, her heart suddenly started to beat faster. Cloud was definitely an ordinary customer, she thought embarrassedly. Erwin thought that although she couldn't become a full-time pastry chef, she was already close to that level. But then Ray noticed the defensiveness in his posture. It was time to figure it out, and she provided important projects that highlight the uniqueness of her bakery. She agreed to raise Robin's level. So did she really want him to make a design for a magic item for her for free? But Rachel refuted his suspicions, saying that she already had the plans, and that when the plans expired, she would have to pay a lot. But with her knowledge, there was no need. During the project's preparation, she submitted a request in advance. The usual production of magical artifacts was entrusted to third-party companies. The prince worriedly said that even if he did it himself, the quality would hardly change much. The bunch of grapes is a symbol of the imperial mages, who are sought after for their quality and are very concerned about their reputation. The idea was original, but there were doubts about its feasibility. But Ray insisted that it would naturally be implemented. His Highness is able to turn the impossible into possible and stands at the pinnacle of all mages as the head of the guild. And Rachel was sure that he would create the most magnificent product. These words confused Erwin. Ray thought that he liked the praise. But, be that as it may, judging by her explanation, she considered him simply as a subcontractor. On the other hand, the prince thought, this proposal was beneficial for him and asked if she knew about it. The Rosaltine family had never collaborated with the imperial court before, but Rachel asked not to worry. And there were already rumors that their relationship was terrible, so this would be taken simply as a signal for reconciliation. Now, could she hear His Highness's response to her proposal? Rachel asked. That was all she had prepared, and there were no more ways to lure him. After thinking about it, Erwin put a seal. Rachel, seeing this, said that she had hopes for His Highness, and so the contract for the waffle iron was successfully concluded. The Duke of Gazin arrived and was informed that His Highness was currently talking with a distinguished guest. They were in the reception room, but if it was urgent, the butler could ask them. But Cloud coldly replied that he would wait. Maybe she was threatened. That's why he was worried. He couldn't let her go through the same thing as him. That's all she had prepared. She had no more ways to attract His Highness. Cloud suddenly heard and thought that Rachel was seducing him. If she was safe, then she had no reason to help her. But she knew so much about what he liked. They do share secrets, but perhaps he was mistaken in thinking there could be a connection between them. Something more than a client-customer relationship, but he was never anyone special to Rachel. And so they sealed their cooperation with a handshake, when suddenly there was a knock on the door, and the prince asked to come in. The girl was taken aback when she saw her VIP customer. He had a lot of other things to do. But then Cloud said that he would take Mistress Rachel and return, turning to the door, and the girl thanked him. Left alone, Erwin picked up the drawing from the table, and smelling the sweet aroma, said that she knew how to surprise. Rachel asked if he was hot in his uniform, and Cloud replied that it was tradition, so his opinion didn't matter. Indeed, Cloud was a bit old-fashioned, but his simplicity and naivety contained all the charm, her type. Okay, stop! Rachel stopped her thoughts with a punch to the face. No strange thoughts about the client. Seeing how much treasure was suffering from the heat, Rachel handed him a cooling pack, which was gaining popularity these days. A friend gave it to her and it really worked. Taking out a lot of packages, she said, and Cloud asked if it was hard for her. The girl replied that it was nothing. It was better than suffering from the heat, and that working in the bakery had toughened her up. The girl lifted the sleeve of her shirt and offered to look at her muscles, but just after looking at her, Cloud's face turned very red. Blushing, he turned away, closing his eyes. And Rachel asked him not to laugh. Of course, she was not as powerful as he was, but no worse, and asked him to touch her. Later, Ray realized that he wasn't laughing, but blushing, and asked if everything was okay, and asked him to look in if anything happened. But now the prince was probably waiting for him. She was getting into the carriage, but then Cloud asked if what they were saying about her and the crown prince was true. "Rumor!" Rachel asked with a laugh, and explained that in a way it was. But now everything was fine. Cloud was talking about something completely different from what Rachel was talking about, and thinking they had had a fight, he said he was glad everything was resolved and slammed the door. But as soon as the Duke had gone far enough away, the girl realized that he had spoken to her about the rumor of love, and she screamed worriedly that she thought he was talking about friendship, and she didn't know why rumors about her falling in love had suddenly started. But the sound was muffled and inaudible. Cloud's face was blank, Rachel noticed, and she worriedly wondered if he was secretly in love with the prince. But no, that's impossible. Love had no gender. But there was a plot. Maybe he just didn't expect such a turn of events. The new dish turned out incredibly tasty. At first, Daniel thought, why would she need this if she has a toaster and an oven? Daniel asked to be allowed to take over the distribution. They were probably expecting success, and the Vine Seal was doing its job. She was still deciding on the raw dough issue. They needed to increase its popularity and whether to open a specialty store. Ultimately, both options were beneficial to them and could definitely increase sales. Daniel said that all ideas were really good in their own way, and upon hearing this, Rachel was stunned and asked Martha to wait. And when the girl left, Rachel said that she would not be offended and asked him to tell her honestly whether he did not like her plan. This way they could quickly get rid of the ground goods, she reported, which was good. But then Daniel turned to Ms. Rachel and asked if she wanted their contract to end early. She asked with concern because she was concerned about the weed issue. But what was going on? And she replied that it was better not to make fun of it. Adjusting his glasses, Daniel said that he would take this into account in future negotiations about a contract extension. The waffles were ready. According to this recipe, they add apple jam and fresh cream. The result is wonderful. Pre-mixed ingredients are much easier to store than raw dough, and Daniel said it was delicious after trying it. Daniel thought she liked fresh cream and asked if she often added it to the recipe, and she did. The homemade jam also smelled wonderful, and the bread was so soft and moist that it was beyond words. Rachel noticed that he was generous with compliments today, and the guy replied that she once said that there were plenty of delicious bakeries everywhere. However, Daniel admitted that he doesn't think so, and for him, Rachel's bakery is the best. Rachel assumed he was afraid she would close the business and told him she wasn't going anywhere and he could continue investing. The guy laughed and asked what about her savings. She had already paid off all her debts, and Ray said that she spent everything on preparation. Then Daniel thought it was time to find a diamond cutter, and Rachel asked if he had a plan yet. That too, but that's why I thought it would be best to release the product for the spring social season in Auburn next year. Of course, hiring a master required money, and Ms. Rachel would need capital, and asked if she had found a buyer for Dawn. Lately, the artist Andrea has been discussed. They said he has beautifully depicted the Daneva Sea, bathed in sunlight. His idol, the great master Andre, was also attracting more and more attention, and now was the perfect time. He asked if Andrea often gave her paintings, so why not sell them together? The girl was in thought. Most likely they would sell Dawn after she found a master. They had already talked about jewelry masters, and the day after his meeting with Count Dishon, Cloud promised to invest. Daniel suspected that Cloud might know about their mine, but fortunately, this was not the case. But it was necessary to find a new master, and Rachel asked him to take this with him. She packed Madeline's for him, because he shouldn't skip meals. When she said goodbye to Daniel, Martha asked the lady if she was finished, and Rachel replied that they would close early today. She needed to stop somewhere so she could go back to the mansion. Martha understood her, but asked if something happened. She replied that it was nothing special. It was just something that happened. Although in fact, something did happen. The fact that Duke Gesson and Count Dishon were going to sign a contract cannot be allowed, because the Count is not suitable for important tasks. In the original story, Juliana handed Count Dishon over to the authorities, but now she too will have to intervene. Although she still didn't have any clear evidence, she still wanted to try to convince him. A week later, in an illegal gambling establishment, the Count walked around the building and slandered those who cheated at the game. But it didn't matter, he still had plenty of money. Most of the knights fighting the monsters of the north carried magic stones. There was a legend that once such a necklace with a magic stone saved the life of a knight. Although most thought it was just a coincidence, research into magical tools that could repel monsters continued. What if we embed magic stones into weapons? Then we won't need to wear jewelry. The stones will affect monsters. This is a blessing. Magic stones are usually not aware of enchantments, but with the use of the technique developed by the Count, this is possible. Can it still be called a broken blade weapon? Of course not, and he applied this principle, which will revolutionize the military world. Apparently, the Count thought, they only care about survival, so they take him with them. But who cares whether it's a fake or not? If they rely on the stone and die, what does it matter to him? It's good that the funds still remained. He approached the man, who, seeing the potential wallet, said that since he was so confident in his actions, what about the party? Count Dishon saw this as a great opportunity, and, agreeing to the game, proudly said that this time he would take everything. But after a while, having lost, he screamed in horror that it was unbelievable and demanded that the swindler immediately return his money. After this, the man asked to be taken away, and, taking off her disguise, Rachel sighed sadly how boring it was. The croupier set him up, doing everything according to plan, and worriedly asking if he would turn a blind eye to the illegal gambling establishment. Rachel said his assistance was greatly appreciated, and asked if an instrument of that caliber didn't require royal approval. She asked if he had received permission, but judging by his face, he had, and said that she hoped His Highness would show mercy. She couldn't ignore the existence of an underground establishment. The croupier worriedly thought that she was from the Crown Prince's entourage. Therefore, he decided to take the girl hostage. However, grabbing her hand, he realized in horror that she was not moving at all. Rachel kneaded elastic dough every day and easily lifted 20-kilogram sacks of sugar and flour, equal to a man. But since nothing worked for him, he decided that there was no other choice and took out the blade. This came as a surprise to Rachel. She had not expected this outcome at all, and now the dealer was already swinging. However, Cloud immediately grabbed his hand and twisted it behind his back, putting it on the table, and, enraged by his behavior, ordered him to take it away. After the Duke had dealt with some issues, he ran up to Rachel, who was waiting for him outside, and asked if she was okay. The girl sweetly replied that she was very glad that he came at the right time. She immediately felt relieved. She held her hands close to her, but then Cloud asked if she was hurt, and Rachel winced, tensing up as she remembered the bruises on her arm. Covering her hand, she said shyly that she always has a lot of wounds and often gets burns and cuts during work. But Cloud, concerned about Rachel's condition, said that she had promised to just stall for time, that everything would go smoothly. A few days ago, at the residence of Duke Gessen, Cloud learned that Count Dishon was gambling. Rachel said she was sure something would come up during the investigation, but for now, it was just speculation. They needed to keep watching him, and Rachel asked Cloud what he thought. They just didn't have any evidence of his guilt. But nevertheless, Cloud said, he trusted Rachel Rosaltine's words. These words confused the girl, but the situation was resolved. Cloud immediately organized surveillance on Count Dishon, and as expected, it turned out that the Count had recently acquired a large amount of tilka. Teal'c is a gemstone that is very similar to the magic stones. He probably planned to profit from this stone and escape. It was worth waiting for his further actions or arresting him, Rachel thought. And Cloud agreed that this was the case. But magic stones were only a last resort, and the Northern Knights were trained not to rely on them. Cloud followed the Crown Prince to prove his honor and loyalty to the crown. Cladu, possessing enormous power, voluntarily bowed to the royal family. The royal family has always kept an eye on him. They can take advantage of the situation to strengthen their position in the north. Then why not convict him of something the royal family won't tolerate, right there in the gambling house? And she will do this because she knows a couple of tricks, although these are Rachel's memories from the original story. Cloud said it was too dangerous for her, but deception was against the royal code, as he himself was going to catch him. Involving outsiders was unsafe, and they risked losing the count, the girl reported. And after some thought, Cloud asked Rachel to take care of herself, which she promised him, smiling. Now he reminded her of that conversation. But Rachel still asked him not to worry, because it wouldn't stop her from baking. He would have repaid him in kind for what he had done, but since Rachel had helped, he would first sort everything out. But then, looking after Rachel as she left, Cloud suddenly called out to her and asked if she had a fever, and the girl shuddered. The next moment, the Duke lifted the cloak from her shoulders and discovered that she was also wounded in the neck. Grabbing the girl in his arms, he said that the wounds needed to be treated immediately and that they were heading to the nearest residence. "What?" Rachel said worriedly. "But the bakery is next to the Duke's residence." "But she doesn't want complications," Cloud asked, and said that the doctor on duty would take care of her. However, Rachel was embarrassed that she was carrying her. This was something instead of training, incredibly strong. She was very heavy. Trying to lighten the atmosphere, she asked if he had ever thought about taking up baking, and the Duke suggested they be quieter. Upon reaching the residence, Rachel expressed a desire to go on her own, and Cloud asked her to be careful. In the garden where they stopped, there was a woman whom Cloud called Mom, which surprised Rachel. Could it really be that former reclusive duchess? The girl thought. The lady approached them, greeting her son, but the next moment, seeing her son with the bakery owner, she turned away and covered her face with the veil from her hat. Rachel bowed gratefully, saying she was glad to meet Madame, and introduced herself as Rachel of the Rosaltine family. Shy, Rachel thought, as Madame turned to her, covering her face, and introduced herself as Katerina Gezin. The girl noticed that she was gardening. Katerina replied that she loved tomatoes and asked if they could talk to Cloud alone. Even in the shadows, she had great influence on high society, was involved in agriculture, and this was amazing. Katerina told her son that he should have warned her, but Cloud replied that he couldn't, because Rachel was injured. After this, Katerina turned to Rachel and asked if she liked tomatoes. The girl answered positively. Then, before leaving, she asked to eat a little, saying that their cook prepares dishes from them very well. But first, the wound needed to be treated. Strangely, Rachel thought. For some reason, it seemed familiar to her. When Katerina left, Cloud said that she probably went to the orphanage that was under their protection. Rachel assumed the Duke's mother was a kind woman to invite a stranger to dinner. Cloud could have thought of something if he wanted to refuse, but Rachel decided to definitely come. But then they needed to finish their business. He applied cold ointment to the girl's hand and said that it was hell after all that he had brought her here, but it would be better to bandage the wound on her neck. Rachel thought about it and said worriedly that it wasn't worth it. After that, Cloud carefully touched the wound on Rachel's neck, causing her to flinch in surprise. He asked solicitously if it hurt when he touched her, but Rachel sheepishly replied that everything was fine, just a little tingling. She felt very awkward and wanted it to end quickly. Why was he so kind and sweet? And then the girl decided to change the subject, asking what if the Duchess found out about his passion for the bakery. The guy replied that the Duchess's house served excellent desserts to the servants, so she could consider the treatment part of social assistance. So their bakery was famous in the Duke's house, Rachel exclaimed. All thanks to him, their dear customer. She was so happy when they talked about the bakery that even her tone changed, Cloud noticed, next to whom Rachel found herself. Realizing what she was doing, the girl's face turned deeply red, and out of embarrassment, she pulled away, offering to finish. Cloud reached out to her worriedly to keep her from getting up abruptly, but then they both found themselves on the couch, the guy hovering over her. Rachel couldn't say anything from embarrassment and only blushed even more, and Cloud blushed and apologized, saying that he would get up now. But his attempts to quickly get up were unsuccessful. He pressed the girl's hair, causing her to scream and cling to him, and at that very moment, through carelessness, she tore Cloud's shirt, tearing off a large piece, starting from the chest. At that moment, Cloud had already stood up, and after a few seconds of realizing what had happened, he covered his body with his hands, and Rachel apologized. Eventually, Cloud had to change clothes, and they moved to the dining room. Rachel was brought her portion, and informed that they had canapés with tomatoes and their own cheese. Looking at the dishes on the table, Rachel thought that she had never expected such a tomato paradise. She had only thought about jam or soup. Katerina asked if she could pick some tomatoes for her. She grew them herself, so they were fresh and tasty. Rachel was very grateful and also planned to organize a small garden at the bakery. Cloud looked at his mother with incomprehension. She asked if she could come to her for advice later, and Katerina saw no reason to refuse. Her request was probably unexpected, but the Duchess said that everything was fine, and Rachel wondered if she took off her hat at all. The lady said that she had heard that she had been injured and asked how she was feeling and whether she would stay for tea. Rachel replied that the wound was fine and she would accept the invitation. The maid watching her recalled her sister's words. Ever since her sister Alice started working at the bakery, all she can talk about is how perfect Rachel is. Maybe she's being taken in by her kindness, or maybe she has problems, the maid thought, and her friend touched her glass. Its contents accidentally splashed onto Rachel's clothes, and the girl, horrified, asked for forgiveness. Rachel replied that it was okay. She had already eaten, so she would leave first, and asked if she could borrow an outfit. Katerina was truly sorry that this happened, so she asked the girl to take whatever she wanted. When everything was ready and the maids helped Rachel change into a blue dress, she thanked them. Then the girl turned to the lady and, bowing very low, said that she was to blame and wanted to apologize again. She panicked because she was more terrible than she thought and would definitely yell at her. But Ray smiled and said that mistakes happen, especially when they are so busy. One of her workers dropped a whole carton of eggs. "This happens," the lady said sweetly. "There is nothing wrong with it, and everything can be fixed," so she asked not to worry. This touched the girls, and then they admitted that in fact her sister works in her bakery. They didn't understand why their sister called her perfect, but now she did, and she really felt sorry for her. Rachel said she didn't expect to receive an apology and thanked them, which made the girls admire her even more. And Ray, still not having recovered from today's situation, thought that everyone thought she was so amazing, but she had torn Cloud's clothes off. As Rachel left the dining room, Katerina took off her hat and said that she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Cloud asked his mother why there had been such a sudden change, and her voice was also unnaturally low. The lady replied sweetly, "I just wanted to, for no reason," and suggested finishing the meal by having tea in the greenhouse. The lady said she would go and tidy herself up, but he could go, and Cloud understood his mother. She wondered why he bought his favorite desserts from Rachel, thinking it was to help the bakery grow. Their son probably had feelings for her. They said she shouldn't interfere in the love affairs of the young, but if there was such an opportunity, why not? The maid reported that the lady said she needed a little more time and asked to enjoy the snacks first. After seeing the maid leave, she exclaimed that now was the time and asked the customer to eat his dessert quickly. She said that, pretending to eat it, Cloud was very touched by the lady's concern, but said that it was not worth it. It was a great opportunity to try other confectioners' products, and it really was a good opportunity. Then she offered Cloud a strawberry latte. She already knew its taste, and Cloud modestly agreed. After assessing the situation around them and making sure that no one was there, Rachel and Cloud began to secretly eat sweets. Suddenly, a maid came up, and the couple immediately stopped eating, and she said that the Duke had a letter. Cloud asked them to leave it, and when she left them alone again, Cloud laughingly asked if she also ate in secret. Rachel laughingly admitted that she couldn't help herself. They suggested finishing the conversation before Madame arrived and started talking about the letter from Count Dishon. Rachel asked Cloud to read it, and the Duke's face made it clear that it contained bad news. And indeed, the imperial court still did not want to let him go. They probably thought it would cause more damage to the empire, saying the Count's skills were excellent, Ray recalled. No one has yet been able to reproduce the engraving method using sword energy. But that doesn't mean they should ignore the existence of illegal gambling establishments. Or what if the Count is involved with drugs? Cloud said that then the imperial court would have no choice but to punish severely. And then Rachel had a request. She asked to continue protesting so that the trial would not end like this, and she would try to collect more evidence. Cloud asked in surprise why she was helping him, and Rachel said that it was because she needed his assets too. She also needs to earn a living, and by the way, when Madame comes, they will eat everything now. Rachel changed the subject. Lying in bed, Katerina thought peacefully, let the youth spend time together, hoping that Rachel would become their daughter-in-law. That night, Rachel received the information and immediately threw up on the new carpet of the secret room. She apologized, saying that the content was too disgusting, and the man understood her. Drug distribution, use at meetings, and a lot of crimes to cover it up. And the most shocking thing is that it was not the Count who engraved the jewelry, but his son. When the wife tried to stop the exploitation of her son, the Count imprisoned mother and son separately. In the original, it was mentioned briefly, but now it was even more terrible, and she had to immediately tell Cloud everything. The information obtained through the informant was immediately passed on to the Imperial Knights through Cloud. The Count could not escape severe punishment. He narrowly escaped the death penalty by offering all the money he had collected to the Imperial Court. Her name also appeared in the newspapers as the one who solved the case, but she had not intended to give such an interview, and it was awkward. Afterwards, she opened the letter and read that, thanks to her, the Count's son was able to see his mother again. There is a light in his life. The pain he went through will not go away, but he will try to replace it with good things. The guy wrote that from now on, he would accept any requests from Duke Gisen and Lady Rachel, and he apologized for not being able to repay her kindness, and so she unwittingly made the Empire's best engraver her ally. Rachel thanked Samuel for bringing the letter. The last time the Duke carried her, it was a surprise, but she had a few days of rest, and she needed it, thanks to which the preparation went well. She couldn't tell yet, but she hinted that Dawn would soon appear in the world again. After some time, the next lot arrived at Clara's Imperial Auction House. This was what everyone had been waiting for. The film Breaking Dawn, with a starting price of $89 million. The painting, which the Crown Prince had not yet given up, was an excellent opportunity to establish connections. But first, as they all knew, this work belonged to the late Monsieur André, whom the consignor also held in high esteem. They would like to add a special procedure to the auction process, a quiz presented by the consignor. Once the final bid is determined, the first person to answer correctly will receive the painting. People rebelled, asking what this was. What about those who simply raise the price and leave? And what if it was a setup? But the auctioneer said there was no specific price limit here. And besides, this was not a place where one could negotiate in advance. He also asked them to remember that they were working under the patronage of the Crown Prince and suggested they begin. Everyone quoted different prices, reaching up to 100 million. But then the prince offered 500 million for the painting. Since there was no higher bid, the auctioneer set the price at 500 million crowns. And after asking those who don't want to place bets to lower their numbers, I decided to ask the remaining four a question. When André was 20 years old, on his 8th drink in a bar with 7 tables, how many people were sitting at his table? People discussed the question of how they could know. Maybe 5. Or maybe, since it was a party, then all 20, they assumed. Erwin smiled and decided to say 2, thinking that the deceased had a particularly close friend. But before the Crown Prince had time to think about his name, a male voice behind him announced the number 1. He explained his answer by saying that André was probably enjoying his solitude, and Erwin was horrified to think why this man was here. This was the correct answer, and thus Viscount Mendroff became the owner of Dawn. The man thought sadly that indeed, no one but him had guessed how the young lady could have found out. Not long ago, she tracked him down and waited until he was alone, and he asked if it was because he held a key position in construction. This was impossible, and he wanted to threaten her with the law. But Rachel worriedly asked him to calm down. The girl said that she had come on a completely different matter, and it concerned André, and the Viscount froze. The deceased left a will in which he asked to burn all his paintings, and he, the Viscount, collected and burned all the paintings in accordance with the request. The man said that few people knew about the will, and Rachel sweetly replied that she heard it from Andrea. He occupied a prominent place in the circle and respected André. The Viscount realized that they were in for a long conversation and invited him into the house. Rachel said she planned to give Dawn to him, although the Crown Prince would try to get the painting back. If he wins the auction, he will lose all interest in the painting, so I plan to add one condition for winning. That's why Rachel asked the Viscount to tell her something that only the two of them knew. The man was not sure if he had such a story. He first noticed it in the company of a variety of people. He seemed to live a different life than he did, but they actually met at an exhibition of paintings by unknown authors. The fireworks display was stunning, and it was strange that it wasn't popular. He went there in the midst of the celebration. He looked more satisfied than lonely. But when he saw the young Master Mendroff, he turned to him. The long-haired, embarrassed young man asked him to become his patron, and he would not regret it. It turned out that these were his paintings, so he became his patron. But due to financial fraud, his family was on the verge of collapse. He had to leave the mansion and go into hiding for a while Andre hid him in his house. Although he himself was in a difficult situation, now he has become rich again. But what's the point? He couldn't help him. The only thing he remembered was enjoying a drink alone and sitting with his back to him while he drew. That was all. He didn't know if it would help. But Rachel got the impression that the Viscount didn't like to drink very much. "That's true," the man replied in surprise, but he did feel a little disappointed. Rachel understood and took everything into account, thanking him for the story and saying that she would come up with a question that only he could answer. In the end, she became friends with Viscount Mendroff, and looking at the dawn, she wondered if he had burned the painting. She seemed to understand why Andre had left his will to Viscount Mendroff, someone who knew you better than he did. A man like that is worth cherishing, Rachel thought, remembering Cloud's smile, and said shyly that she would even fall in love with such a man.